Hello and welcome back to the Queery Helpline with Patrick Hopkins, hosted by yours truly, Morgan Hazelwood. And we are here raising money for reproductive rights because bodily autonomy is still important no matter what's going on in the political world. And also because rewriting someone else's query is a million times easier than working on your own. Who are we? Patrick Hopkins and I have edited hundreds of submission packages and helped get more than 50 writers pages requested and almost 20 of them to get agents or publishers. Patrick is obsessed with verbs and query statistics, while I've pored over the querying process and read most fiction genres. Between the two of us, we can flag and fix practically any problem in a submission package as long as it's not our own, helping prove that rewriting someone else's query is easier than writing your own. And today we don't have a query lined up, but we do have the latest pitch party to review and tell you what works and what was a good thought. Bless their heart.
Okay. All right, go ahead and load up your thing, Morgan, and I will.
Sure.
I looked at these and I have thoughts. It's hard to publishing advice goes in paragraph form, and tweets are not paragraphs. They're very, very not paragraphs. So word count, a thing that you have to remember is that the business side of writing, paper cost has gone up and up and up and up. And
even if it's not the paper cost per se, it's the shipping costs because
or both of them, honestly.
Yeah, gas has gone up, so getting the paper is pricey, and getting the book to you is pricey.
When I worked at a newspaper, we were told that the price of paper had roughly tripled between 2000 to 2008, something like that. That was 15 years ago. Yeah. Paper is a huge, huge, huge cost. So publishers who are having to shell out money on debuts, which might go nowhere, don't like, because what happens is after a certain word count, it's about 100,000 words, the binding cost for this book goes way, way up.
Yeah.
If you have proven that you can sell books, they will let you incur that cost because they know that you put your name on the book, moves copies.
You're good for it.
Marissa Meyer could write tomorrow a 225,000 word middle grade adventure and sell it because she's Marissa Meyer. Mary Higgins Clark wrote a picture book that is scenes, like picture scenes with lots and lots and lots of words, which she can do because her name is Mary Higgins Clark. You cannot.
No.
So on the high end, word count tells publishers, I know and I respect the cost you have to incur here. On the low side of things, not enough book.
It also shows how well you know your genre and how well you know what your competitors are doing. They talk about market research and like writing for the market. No, this is your readers' expectations. And if you mess with your readers' expectations, if they're expecting an 80,000 word book and you give them 60K, you will get 1-star reviews. If they're expecting an 80K book, which is what, 300, 350 pages, and you give them 450 pages, they will get tired of it and they will 1-star review you. If you mess with reader expectations, you will get blasted. And that's why knowing the market is important. It's not because we don't want diverse books. It's because you have to manage the reader's expectations. And if you mess with their expectations, they are not kind.
I had someone come to me a year ago with, I've told this story more than once to you. This is a 52,000 word genre-less adult book that needed to be told. That's nice, but from a business perspective, if you're under count by 10,000 words, there isn't enough plot. And if you don't have a genre, you'd have a place to put it in the bookstore. Because if you look at Amazon, if you look at Barnes & Noble, all these places, right, they have categories for books. So you can search. They want to make discovery easy for you because they don't have physical shelves. You can't look at a series of books, right? You can't do it like you can in the bookstore. If you don't have specific aspects there, you can't call it a fantasy. You can't call it a romance, whatever. So
if people don't know what to expect, they either won't read it or they'll one-star review you. And that's why genre is important. It's not because we hate creativity.
No, it's because the creativity has to conform to business expectations. And again, once you're
established, you're fine.
You can do stuff, right? You can have, when for example, Stephanie Meyer published that Twilight book, right? Sold many copies. And the second book started with blank pages. You can't do that unless you have proven that people will open your book and be like, okay, this is a device she's using. I'm going to keep turning the page. If you sent an agent your first chapter and it was blank, they would think there was either a formatting error or some other thing that happened, and they didn't blame you, the computer. What they wouldn't say is, oh, this is a plot, a structural or a formatting element that is being used for dramatic purposes. I just sent you the next one.
Yeah. So, we were talking about that. Okay, sorry.
Yes.
I thought we were pre-talking before getting to it. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's what this is. Whatever, All right.
Okay, so the synopsis should be included in the middle of the query letter. False.
This gets into so much fun.
Although there are agents who call it the synopsis, 99.9% of them are not actually looking for a synopsis at this part. This is the story portion of the query with your hook, with your first third of the book.
Yes. You do not want to. Okay, there are people who think that a pitch that is long, and long is relative to the person, read like a synopsis. This is not possible because the synopsis doesn't sound like the query. A synopsis sounds like a factual recounting with maybe a little intensity. And also, a lot of agents, bless their hearts, do not need or want a synopsis. And if they don't want it, which we're going to cover soon, don't give it to them, because number one, you're showing them that you haven't looked at what they want. Number two, anything you add can only hurt you because there's a chance that you did something wrong with it, right? You don't want to have personalization if they don't care.
Yeah.
You don't want to have, if they don't care about comps, you lose nothing by excluding them. All right, I'll give you the next one.
Oh, I found all of them, so I'm good.
Oh, good. All right, so I can stop linking you. Hooray!
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, so nudging is Nudging is one of those paragraph things. If the agent says don't nudge, then don't nudge. And frankly, if the agent says don't nudge, maybe don't query. Because if they are not interested in being contacted by you for business communication, do you want to work with them?
Yeah.
That's your decision. I don't query people who say do not contact me, because okay, I'm not going to contact you at all. Other people do, that's their business. I will say I do not have on my do not query list anybody there solely because they don't respond, because that's kind of gross. However, Eric Smith has said that if they don't have a policy otherwise, sure, nudge them. Why not? Because here's the thing. The average well-known agent is going to get hundreds of queries a month. It is so incredibly easy for them to forget about one. Okay?
Yeah.
One query in 600. That's not even a rounding error. That's a rounding error. Okay?
Yeah.
So have the confidence that they have forgotten about how amazing you were because something happened, right? Eric Smith has a kid, right? If he hears vomit noises while he's reading something, he drops what he's reading and he goes, I'm the same way. If I hear a crash or it's been quiet for too long, I go, oh, something's happened. I need to drop what I'm doing and go check on my kids, right?
Yeah.
So
for me, typically these days, most places will let you know that they have received your query, especially if you do it through a query manager or submission tracker.
Yeah.
It'll automatically do it. But most agents these days will say, yes, I got it. So you don't need to nudge anymore to say, hey, did you get it?
Yeah.
A month
But if
later
it's
doesn't make sense because 9 out of 10 agents say somewhere between 4 and 12 weeks,
yeah,
which is barely
that's
a month. And
yeah.
publishing, I generally give them double whatever they say
Mhm.
before I nudge.
Yeah, I say
Wha
6 weeks to 12 weeks enough that it's but if they and especially if they say to nudge, go do it. They're telling you to.
Yeah,
But if they don't
yeah,
say not to, you lose
yeah.
with a reasonable person, with an emotionally mature adult, which is not all agents or
No,
publishers. Let's
no,
just be honest about this,
unfortunately.
okay? Let's just be honest.
As
People get
many
into
of them are
publishing,
as stable as us writers.
which is to say not, because we know many writers who need an adult. It happens.
We're
But
writing
if they
our
don't
own so we
say
can find one to save us.
if they don't say not to, okay,
Yes.
then have the confidence in your work to say, okay, I'm going to assume this person is an emotionally mature adult and can handle me
Yeah,
politely going, hey, what's going on? By the way, my query. Because for one thing, maybe it's a no from one and a no from all agency, and
yeah,
you want to go at somebody else there, right? Maybe
yeah,
someone joined for whatever reason, but have the confidence in your stuff to go, hey, a thing. And yeah, if you get an offer, definitely do.
yeah,
Because that's, I mean, if you get an offer, give them 2 weeks, unless
yeah,
there's, and sometimes they won't have the time because 2 weeks in publishing, there, it just went by, right?
yeah,
It happens.
yeah.
For me, from the perspective of daily deadlines, 2 weeks is approximately 9 years, but in publishing, this is not the case.
Right.
Um,
So I've
so to review,
heard that
mhm.
most agents, if they hear that you've gotten an offer, it'll be a quick no. So do not
Yeah,
be surprised.
yeah,
It means nothing about the level of it. They're just like, oh, yay, this book has found a home for it. I was thinking about it, but
I was on the fence or whatever. Yeah. On the other
and they
hand,
wanted to have a good home and they wanted to have someone who is super excited to support
yeah,
it. So don't think other agents coming back after you get an offer quickly saying no. It may just be their schedule and they're excited that you did find a home
yeah.
for it.
However, if they subtweet you after, which is why one agent is on my do not query list, there's a lack of emotional maturity there.
Yeah.
So, because you have to choose to do that stuff.
Typically, a
Mhm.
I got an offer nudge is going to be like, hey, I sent this to you on whatever date, and I was just wondering if you were still interested. Let me know if you needed any more materials. Peace out, yo.
Mhm.
Maybe not the peace out, yo, but you get the
That yeah, I would not end much correspondence unless they have shown they don't care.
right.
And some of them don't. I mean, some of them you've seen. I don't use capital letters unless I'm being paid to. Um, and some of them are just as casual about stuff. It's because that's how they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Um,
It's not
number
my
four.
style, but I totally get it. So
It just I got tired of it.
I hear you. I hear you. So, okay. Next up is how much detail should be in the synopsis?
Not as much as you think. This goes into first chapter bias, which is where you think everything is important.
I am so struggling right now with my first chapter about how much world building I need to set the stage and how
Not
much is too much.
not much. You don't need much. You need characters doing
We're on
stuff.
an
People.
alien planet with sentient octopi and
It
flying
doesn't matter.
space manta rays.
It doesn't matter.
And
The
yet
character.
people are like, I'm so confused. Explain to me where these creatures came from. And one of my beta readers said, it would be nice if you compared them to an Earth species so that I could have a good picture. And I'm like, they hate being called octopuses. I didn't think I was making reading between the lines hard here.
So, hi, honey. Okay. This actual synopsis stuff varies by the agent. There
Yeah.
are some who do not want spoilers. They often will tell you they don't. I'm telling you for serious, for real and for true.
They're
Some
rare though.
agents, it is less common. And the good thing is they tend to tell you that they don't want them because I assume they have looked at all at the industry and seen, oh, people want the entire story in the synopsis. Well, I don't. I want to be surprised. To me and most agents, I think the point of synopsis is you remove the surprise because you find out, hey, the character is secretly a jelly roll, right? A physical jelly roll. You do not. Most agents will say you don't need descriptive details. The reason for that takes up space. And if you're trying to cut to a page, space kills. You want information, and here's the fun part of this. Dealing with people who write epic fantasy or epic anything and think they have to have certain things. Any book on the planet, any book, I don't care what book it is, I physically do not care. Any book can be summarized in 750 words or even 500.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What you can't do is keep all the things that your emotional support plot details. You have to cut them. You have to cut your emotional support language, your process language, all that stuff, because the agent will see it in the book. Okay? All of your prepositional phrases, save them for the book.
Yeah.
Because I will kill them when I edit your synopsis. I've done it many times. I do not care. Okay? Because you need to have the emotional maturity to say, okay, you're going to take those 10 words and turn them into 2 or even 0.
So I shared an article this week, and Patrick said, I think I already saw this, but it was about writing your synopsis. If you're using bridging words between scenes, like but, therefore, so this happened, or because, keep it in. If you're listing and then this, skip over that part to the next consequence, the next
thing,
reaction to your action.
Yeah.
And that should be able to help you see where the plot is moving forward. And sometimes even what scenes you can cut from your story, what's not essential.
And sometimes, to be fair, you realize later, oh, actually, there's a reason that is consequential, and here it is. And then but in that case, you've made your plot more clear. You've made the consequentiality, because you have so many details in your head. You have 90,000 words in here, right? Getting them all to make sense, or enough of them to make sense, in 750 in one page is a skill, and you don't have it. And that's fine. You shouldn't have most people don't have it, and that's fine.
And if agents don't specify how long, it doesn't have to be a 1 page. You can do a 3 page. I would not go any longer. If you can't fit it in 3 pages, you're putting way too much in. If you can fit it down to 1 page, you're awesome.
Or you work with me.
Or you work with Patrick.
It's just, this is my thing. I've been condensing stuff since the Bush administration.
Right. The second one.
Yeah, well, the second half of the second one, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to pop into the comments real quick just to say hello to
humans.
Jacob. Hello to Coffee Quills. And Coffee Quills says that they need to work on the synopses a bit later than today.
I would not start a synopsis at 9:50 unless you plan to be up for 3 or 4 hours.
I believe Coffee Quills is a different time zone.
Okay.
So I could be wrong, but yeah.
Yeah, I have started editing a synopsis, someone else's synopsis at 10.
Yeah.
And that I can do because 2 sweeps. My rule is if a synopsis is 16 lines over, that's equal to it being the place it needs to be, because I can just find stuff that fast.
Yeah.
Because people, they do it, I think a lot of them do chapter by chapter paragraphs.
Yeah.
And that's great as an approach. I recommend it, in fact. 1 or 2 sentences per chapter, and then you move on, no matter how much you think you've left out.
And then trim.
But then what happens is you get a lot of space at the end of a paragraph. And delete. You also get a lot of repeated names, first names particularly, and that's the pronouns. But again, you're so close to the work that you don't realize that saying Marjorie, no, different name, Jackie, first in 10 consecutive sentences, she, and that's it. And then you cut an entire line, just the pronouns.
Yeah. So the answer for this, unless specified otherwise, is typically all the spoilers and plot forward information. The synopsis exists so that they know about your plotting and your pacing, not your writing. Your pages are telling about your writing.
And they're looking to make sure, for example, that if you have a book starting in a forest, either the forest doesn't go away or it gets replaced with something else. For it just to disappear is not interesting. So just trees going vanishing, and whatever, we'll do a thing. That's boring.
Yeah.
because what we've seen in queries a lot is someone, for example, with an allergy,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't reappear.
Never gets mentioned again.
And the time when that is okay is if the agent is looking for a character who has an allergy.
Yes.
Okay. In that case, what you can do is put it in the logline, in which a character with an allergy, blah, 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 right? Because allergies don't have to inform every plot, and frankly, they shouldn't.
No.
If you have a ragweed allergy and you're at a convention in Alaska in November, ain't gonna be much ragweed there.
No.
Okay.
No. And sometimes, you have own voices stories, and
Where it's
that's
a
not
fact.
what the story is about. That's just who the character is.
Yeah.
And, you can put that in the log line, but it doesn't need to, come up in the plot more than is necessary for plot reasons. Because there's a huge diversity of people that exist in the world, and they have lives that don't
revolve around sex.
Yep. That identity.
Yep.
So.
Sometimes we mow our lawns.
Yep.
And it's a thing that happens. So
okay. So next, true or false? Even if an agent says they don't want XYZ stories or elements, you should query them anyway because you're certain they'll like it if they just read the pages.
This is a question that they asked because people need to be beaten over the head with this. Okay. If you are a debut writer, you are not the exception to any rule.
Nope.
And what we have seen, I've seen particularly, I don't know if you have, but I've seen this, is white guys think they should write whatever they want. Go ahead. I wish you every possible happiness writing that reverse racism book with cops and soldiers and spies and whatever else. However, if an agent, if particularly a female Black agent, has written, please do not query me with your cop-focused stories. Not only is that a rejection you can avoid, that agent might talk to other agents and say, hey, this guy has queried me 4 times with stuff that looks like Law and Order, for example. And other agents might say, hey, that person is really gross. I don't want to work with them. Because if they don't care about one agent, who says they'll care about another one?
If they can't do their due diligence to look at your 2-paragraph bio saying, please don't include these things, then that speaks to what sort of person you're going to be to work with. You're going to ignore their editorial comments. You're not going to send in stuff on time. And you're going to be like, your opinion doesn't matter. In which case, why are you getting them as an agent if you don't respect their opinion?
Yep. I was going to say something else. What was I going to say?
Sorry.
That's fine. Whatever. I mean, I'll think of it eventually. Pitch Wars a couple years ago. I was pitching a book, entering a book, in which sexual assault is the plot. This is Brianna, and like none of it happens on page, but 2/3 of the mentors said they weren't the best fit for that.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay, cool. Because what that does, okay, there are 600 agents out there, let's say, okay? If you tell me you're not the best fit for this specific plot element that is the plot, okay?
Yeah.
I don't have to look at you again, okay?
Yeah.
You've saved me hours, okay? Because vetting an agent for me, one agent, takes about 3 hours, okay?
I probably do somewhere between an hour and a half to 3 hours.
My anxiety goes, there's got to be something hidden somewhere that is going to make them secretly hate me. Other people are normal.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've seen people query 20 people in 5 minutes because they don't care about comps and they don't need personalization. And those are the 2 big things that, you know, because there are people, I could make a list of 6 agents that have, whatever, that don't really care about all that stuff.
Yeah.
But like from a business perspective, if someone's telling you they don't want it, you're wasting your time. And if you don't forget about not valuing their time, okay? If you don't value your own time, there's a lack of emotional maturity there.
I think the main reason we'll see people doing this is either it's their dream agent or the person says they're looking for 3 things that you have, but don't do it if you have this 4th thing. So they're like, but I have that lyrical world building and the strong female protagonist and the found
Unlikable.
family.
Yeah.
But I have this one thing that they absolutely don't want,
But
but I
it's
have
vampires.
everything else. And they try
Yes.
to convince themselves that it's okay because they have what they are looking for. But no
Yeah.
means no, and 1 no takes away 3 yeses.
Yeah. I've had it be 8 things they absolutely want, 1 thing they don't, and like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Yeah.
because I don't want to get rejected. Just, I mean,
Yeah. Rejection's hard. It's not my favorite.
no.
So,
Okay, number 6,
but
please.
that's usually where people get into it. If you start asking questions because you're trying to justify why you should,
Yeah. What
you
if the
know you
vampire
shouldn't.
is
You're
a
just trying to make
vegetarian?
excuses and get
Yeah.
someone to validate that.
Yeah. I had well, back when I had my Fae, I don't care about Fae. I never will. I can't. I mean, I have watched like award-winning. I've attempted to watch
Yeah.
award-winning shows focused
Mhm.
on Fae. And once I see that word or those wings, I'm like, nope. This just I'm never gonna care. It's like getting
It's
me to
okay.
care
I'll
about
read it. Send it my way.
you could have all of my Fae forever. I just don't care.
That's
And so I had a
fine.
client who's like, okay, this is Fae, which you don't like. How can I do this in a way that you'll tolerate? I said, change it to any other noun. I don't care. And so I got vampire court and everywhere. And I'm like, okay, I know what this was, but they changed it. But you can't change the vampire court in a Fae book. It doesn't. That's not. I mean, those world building stuff. You can't do. But I appreciate that person wanting me that much. They changed the word
What if
Fae
they
to
changed
vampire.
it to a badger court?
I don't care. I see Faye and I see fringe radical or Republican. And I'm like, I am never going to care about this person. I would cross the street to piss on them. Okay.
Unless
Is
they were on fire?
well, no, because then you still get to piss on them.
Oh,
And you
okay,
can go,
okay.
your
I
mouth
was
is
just
really still on
wondering where
fire a
the
whole
line
lot.
was. I
And
was
I can
wondering where the
aim with
line
some,
was.
you know, and then my kids only do it too, and suddenly they're, they're
It's a
drowning in
whole
pee,
party
which is
pee.
what?
Okay, let's we're going weird places. Let's
Hey,
circle back.
you
But
know what?
yeah,
You watch
if you're
people.
trying to justify it, you're trying to justify it, and you know the answer's no. Save both of your time and send it to
Your
somebody
time.
else.
Save your time. You're not gonna hear about the other person. Save your time.
Yeah.
Oh
So
God.
not 3,500.
Oh God. Um.
Oh my God. Bless their hearts.
Okay.
The
So.
2-page synopsis does not exist.
Um.
The hill I will die upon.
So here's the thing about synopses. There are so many links.
Yes.
So many links. The answer they're looking for here. This is one of
It's
those
the
things like the SAT question where you know
yeah.
exactly what they're asking for. It's the point of it is to say this answer.
Yeah.
Let me compare it like this. Okay, I went to a Catholic high school, which is a no, do not do that.
I
And
wow.
it was abstinence only sex education. There was a question on one of our tests that week. What is the only safe form of birth control? And I knew it was
They're
a fill in
looking
the
for
blank. It was a
abstinence.
short answer. So I had raised this point in class because you cannot choose to be abstinent. Other people have to help you along there because you can choose not to engage in sex, and other people can go, "No, what? No, actually, I
We're
want you to have
taking your
sex."
choice away.
So there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
So it factually isn't possible to choose that any more than it's possible to choose not to be hit by a truck. Okay.
Yeah.
It's going to happen sometimes.
Yep.
But for purposes of getting this question right,
Yes.
I did what the teacher wanted. It was disgusting. Okay. Now, here's the thing of how this relates to synopses is this. I have seen and helped with 5-page synopses, because you can do that if you have an agent and that agent says, go ahead, give me details. Okay. It's sort of like a rough plot outline. Okay. I have
That's
written
what
things
Raven
like that.
said in the comments, is to check your submission guidelines. But I think 1 out of
I
20 agents will specify how long they want
they
their.
the thing is, they don't say. Yeah, a lot of them just don't say, because
Yeah.
they don't realize, or they don't, whatever. Or
They
they'll say a
have
brief synopsis.
an
What is this?
imaginary perfect synopsis
Mhm.
that they assume every other agent believes in, and
Yeah,
they're wrong.
I've seen 5-page synopses.
Yeah.
However, if you are trying to get a trying to get an agent, I recommend 1 page, because some agents are okay with longer, but
Yeah.
most agents do not need shorter. So it is a document you can use for someone who needs something up to 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Um, Half a double-spaced page would be
The amount of story you fit in your query letter.
roughly, yeah, maybe for middle grade, maybe. But yeah, it's hard to know. I recommend 1 page. I recommend 750, because it's something most agents will be fine with. I've never heard of anybody getting rejected because of a synopsis that was 1 page. I've heard them getting rejected because it's too short, but that's not a page. That's a half page.
Yeah. I can do the 1-page synopsis, but I find my sweet spot is the 3-page synopsis, because the 2-page synopsis does not exist. For those of you who are new, listen up. For those of you who have been here a while, you've heard this one before. In publishing, anything under 1 page, so like your query letter or your 1-page synopsis, is single spaced. Anything over a page is double spaced. What happens when you double space a 1-page synopsis? You have a 2-page synopsis. Add another half page and you have a 3-page synopsis. It's like magic. I'm a twin. I know how multiplication works. Because I look in the mirror and there's 2 of us. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Morgan, I will just note, politely, he said lovingly, that you haven't asked me to cut one of your synopses in quite some time.
I've gotten
You don't
better.
you don't need a page and a half.
Yeah.
You need help cutting. And also, since Query Manager can help you sort by length, anything I think it's over 1,000 versus under 1,000,
Mhm.
a page and a half gets over 1,000. And
Yeah.
I don't know that it distinguishes between 1,001 and 4,000.
Does
I don't
it?
know. I would have to.
No, it gets
I don't know.
600, 700 words.
However,
Because remember, a page is supposed to be 250 words,
double
but
space.
actually ends up being closer to 300 with modern fonts. So
Yeah.
2 pages. So I'm going to be pushing 900 for a 3-page
You're
synopsis.
with all your prepositions, you'll be pushing 1,000.
I cut half of them. I'm so proud of myself.
So the other thing is the also small. So I'd be concerned. I can get a page to be a little more than 800 if I make the word scream.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
you don't need.
I would like to state that with fantastic settings, sometimes you need, and multiple points of view, you might need a little more space than a contemporary one point of view story.
You are welcome to hold that opinion.
That is my opinion.
I will maintain any book can be summarized.
Yeah.
In a synopsis in 1 page.
Yeah. So
the
Coffee Quilts agreed with Raven, but as we said, 1 out of 20 agents will specify the size of the synopsis.
I have seen people say a short thing and they actually mean a regular thing. I know because I asked.
Yeah.
Because they don't know. They were trained by someone who has a certain opinion, and it might date to 15 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Because some of the queries in the compendium are from 2006. That was 17 years ago now. If they are training under someone who's been around for 40 years in this industry, that's going to lead to some situations. Number 7, please. We're going really fast here.
And all of them think what they want is normal, and all other agents want that same thing. Okay, maybe just 80% of them. There's 20% of them that are a little more aware.
Yeah. It can be, at least.
So
It's interesting.
it is. Okay, we're on to number 7.
Number 7. Number 7.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
Oh, this is the reason that I wanted to do this, because this gets into some stuff, okay?
350 is a little long, but under 200 is a little high.
350 isn't bad for the entire document.
True.
For the entire thing,
okay.
350 can be a good guideline.
Sure.
Okay. Because you have your query, your pitch, which is often good between 2 and 250. I have done sub 200, made it work just fine. Because the person was able to zoom out. They didn't have their emotional support details. Okay. I've done epic fantasy, 160K book at 198. The person was able to zoom out. We made it.
Is good, but they probably need to cut 40,000 from the book if they want to get traditionally published.
This was a year and a half ago.
Yeah, 140. They need
160.
to try their best, be sub 130, best sub 125.
Epic.
Epic still, I think 125.
Hala will disagree with you.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, who does? Tell me.
Hala.
Okay. Is that a publisher or the writer?
No. Holly Williams in our group.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. For
but
epic.
If you're going indie, whatever works for your story.
Yeah.
If you're going traditional, it gets wiggly after 125.
So 100K is the rule for most genres and for most age ranges. But if you're doing adult epic fantasy, the path is the point more than it is with, for example, middle grade contemporary or epistolary. God, epistolary would be 20,000. So tiny. The thing about queer word count, okay, your bio can break this.
Yeah.
You can be talking about, if you've written a story about an archaeologist who does various things on a dig, and you have been working for National Geographic for 20 years, and you've published in these various journals, being specific about that information helps you sell your book, because people are going to be getting it knowing that you have the experience to write about the field work that you're writing about, right? I told you the story many times about the guy with a 315-word bio. His query, with including that bio, was 700 words. Okay, it's the longest one I've seen, and it's an incredibly uncommon thing. But if I were querying my hacker story, okay, I had been working in cybersecurity news since before my middle child, who's in second grade, was born.
Yeah.
Okay. Having all that stuff is a selling point. Okay. The other side of things is, if you're querying a chapter book or a picture book, you don't need or want a 200-word pitch. I have seen picture books. I've seen chapter books sell on a log line as the pitch. I've seen picture books sell on a 25-word pitch. If you have a 100-word picture book, you don't want a long pitch. You don't have. There's no such thing, really.
Yeah.
So
picture books don't have a query letter per se. I would say they have more of a cover letter,
no, they do.
Like you would get with a short story, because it is a short story.
Jessica from who we helped has gotten offers off the work I did with her, and
that's awesome.
that's a query. It conforms. We don't do them as much because it's harder to do them, because you have to have 3 books, and getting 3 separate ideas can be a little much. But A is the answer they're going for here. B isn't always wrong. C can be right. D, I would not do. No. D, I have heard of happening. For D to happen, you have to not know what a query looks like. Okay. And that means you're not soliciting feedback on it, which means you're not going to get to somebody like me. But I've heard of agents getting them. I've heard of in the 600 range often. But again, those people aren't seeking us out because they don't, for one, they don't know that query editing exists, which everyone has to find out.
Yeah. Were any of those more modern, or were they earlier?
So the longest one in the compendium is that one I talked about, 700 something. Right. I've seen 350 plus pitches.
Yeah.
But that's pre-pandemic. But most of that is pre-pandemic anyway, so it doesn't really, help
Right.
us. I forget what it might have been. Eric Smith. It was some agent who's big on Twitter with queries.
Yeah.
Who was talking about how he gets at least once a month he gets a pitch that's 1,000 words long.
Yeah.
Um,
And sometimes the people just don't understand how querying works,
Mhm.
but they have enough in there, and it can work, especially, I think, better with the agents who read the pages before the query.
Yeah.
If they care less about the query and more about the words.
And that's I'm sure it's happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
But fundamentally, if you have someone who hasn't researched queries, they also have researched other things too.
Yeah.
Like other expectations for length or for language use or for character expectations.
Sure.
Agency, for example,
Yeah.
gets notable there.
Yeah. Yeah. Raven says it probably also works when they've already bought into you in the query letter, so formality.
Yeah. If you
Either
have
you've already
someone
reached
who
out.
is, if you have nonfiction, and
Yes.
you have someone who is a name, the book could be ghostwritten easily enough. Okay, if you there,
Yeah.
I mean, when Mark Felt was revealed as Deep Throat, okay, his brain was largely gone, so he wouldn't be writing with clarity. So any book with his name on it would be his name on it, and then someone has massaged things significantly.
Yeah.
So you're getting the story as he would have told it
Yes.
15, 20 years ago, back when he was sharper minded. But at that point, you begin your career with "My name is W. Mark Felt," blah blah blah, Deep Throat, and that's the rest of it. Could be his recipe for béarnaise sauce. It doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. Are we up for
Right.
trivia question number 8?
Number 8. Let's do this. I'm good at this.
Ooh. What elements should be in
Oh,
your pages?
God.
Oh, the struggle.
So let's just begin with I'm going to do my prologue thing. Delete your prologue. There, I have
Wait,
never read a prologue.
can't we have all of this?
I think that's the answer. Because here, and the reason of, and also why you shouldn't have your character getting out of bed. Delete your prologue because, number one, most agents hate them. Most editors hate them. You don't want to give them something they hate, unless the idea is to piss them off. And if you do that, anti-hero, unlikable character. Those are things they can enjoy loathing. Okay, Dexter, I love because he kills people, and I like the idea of that. But a prologue is something that irritates you for a bad reason. Characters irritate you for a good reason. But I think the answer is all these things. What you don't usually want to do, because it's limiting and because, again, agents don't like it, is being with someone talking. Okay. What you also don't want to do is begin with a typical action. The exception to this is when the typical action is driving tension. Okay. If you are getting up out of bed on your last day of finals for high school, and you are planning to do something that day that is notable, that is going to show in the interiority. Okay. If you are, for example, getting up on graduation day, planning to flee the state, which I did, I graduated, I got a diploma, but I was done with that place.
Yeah.
So I was getting up with the interiority of, this is the last time I ever have to deal with these fucking humans. That introduces tension, emotionality, interiority, foreshadowing, all these things that I talk about here. Okay. Whereas considering your face in a mirror, you're not surprised. You're not curious.
I know my mother used to work at a high school in a pretty impoverished part of Virginia, and the valedictorian came home from graduation, and his stepdad had his stuff on the front porch because he was over 18, got him through school, we're done, you're gone.
Yep.
So, that teenager waking up that morning probably already had an inkling of that. And so there's some interiority there of, I'm a success in my school, but none of it matters because I have no family support.
Yeah, they're my home. Yep.
So yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, you want curiosity, you want emotionality, you want surprise. You don't want the reader to guess everything that's going to happen. You need tension. You need to introduce your main character. You need a voice. Sorry.
You're hinting at things, and as
Yep.
the pages go, you answer a question, and in that same breath, you ask a related one.
Yeah.
Because people don't talk in, as you know, Morgan, 6 years ago, here's the entire backstory of that thing. They talk in hints of things.
Unless they are complaining.
Yes.
You can get away with a lot more explicit info dumping if your character is complaining about it.
Oh yeah, what about the? But wasn't it? No, it was actually the. And it's,
do we have to do this every time? Oh my gosh, can I just get some coffee?
Literally, you are the reason because this thing that happened. Shut up, Marjorie. Why do I keep saying Marjorie?
Whatever. Yeah. So
getting all that in 250 words.
And you need to, if you don't hit the inciting incident, you need to at least foreshadow the genre, what's going to happen.
Something happening, yeah. If you have a,
there's a big test coming up, there's signs of war, there's whatever.
You have a problem, and it relates to
yeah. So okay, did you have anything else on trivia 8?
I hope not. Because first pages is so hard.
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay. All right.
No.
So if you're
read
lucky,
directions.
If you're lucky, the agent has, and to their, most agents are good about this actually. The irritating thing is when the agency has, the irritating thing is when the agent's page and their publisher's marketplace and their MSWL disagree on requirements. For example, email me versus use Query Manager. Or give me two chapters versus 3 chapters.
Yeah.
In that case, I would honestly ask them, tweet at them, something. Because if they don't, maybe they have forgotten that they had it some different in some other place.
Yeah.
Or you'll find out when you ask them that they are not respectful of the fact that they have been flawed in some way. Okay?
Yep.
Sometimes it's a matter of contacting their assistant. But if they aren't clear, ask them. And if they are clear, give them only what they ask for 2 big reasons. Number one, if you give them something they didn't ask for, all it can be is wrong. Okay? Because number one, you didn't follow directions. Number two, there may be a problem on the page. Okay? Also, if you give them something they didn't ask for, what you're telling them, if you didn't look closely, is that you can't follow directions. And if you can't follow directions with something that isn't legally binding, then when you sign your contract for that duology, one of whose books has to be in a different world, in a different age range. Oopsie, I wrote another middle grade fantasy because it came to me. I had to write it. Nope.
And
because people think that, go ahead.
I was going to say that if you can't follow directions, if you can't read the words, how are you going to read their edit notes? How are you going to copy edit your own work if you can't notice what the directions are saying?
I had a client more than a year ago who had written an adult historical fantasy. It was 120,000 words, which is already a red flag. Even pre-pandemic, that was bad. And on his front page, on his first page, he had 2 misspelled words. If you don't include, if the agent doesn't want pages, which I can't think would happen, but let's just imagine the agent doesn't want them. If you send them something with a misspelled word, they know you misspelled a word. If you don't, they don't.
Yeah.
And you have more time to have someone going, hey, you have a te in your 3rd paragraph. Okay, So yeah, do not if they don't want a synopsis, don't send them. If they don't want your pitch, your Twitter pitch um in your query, then don't.
Yeah.
Because it's a long thing and it looks awkward. And in most cases, the successful query that comes off a Twitter pitch does not include the text of the pitch, and all you need to do is link to it, honestly. And that's what they'll say is a lot of the time, if I've liked this, please include it in the query. That's an easy thing to do. I have examples in my resources page for that because people every single time they go, hey, how do I include you liked my pitch in your query? And I'm querying you because you liked my pitch. Link to it. In Mood Pitch.
Yeah.
Title is a genre, age, word count, blah blah blah. It's very easy.
Tell them what they want, what they really, really want.
Do not ever do that again. He said that to me.
I will try not to, but I cannot promise that I won't randomly think of it some other time and think it's hilarious.
Never gonna give you up. Never gonna...
I wasn't going there. I was Spice Girling you. I mean, I do seriously enjoy that song, and that was my hand washing.
It's a lovely song.
It is. It's a great song.
Do you know the interesting thing about that song is the people who were directing it, who were in charge of the financial aspect, worried that Rick Astley did not sound like a white guy.
No.
And so they shied away from showing him in the video because they thought people would think, okay, here's a black guy singing this song. I like it. We don't want to upset them by giving them white face. Right?
I love the music. I love being like, oh my God, that tiny little boy, scrawny boy has that voice.
Yeah.
And anytime I get rickrolled, I'm just going to sit there and listen to it once, maybe twice. It's a good song. Maybe dance to it.
It's been, God. It's been 15 years since that was big, I think. Yeah. It happened at a wedding I went to, and it was very, okay, well, you did the thing. But
your kids are singing it now.
They only know. The thing about that is people now don't know the rest of the song even more. They don't ever.
We had a new album come out in 2016.
Wow, did it have that song on it? Because that's the only way.
No, he had a song about angels or something. I don't know.
Oh, that's not interesting.
Sorry.
If I were in charge of Rick Astley's, oh God, no.
We are in fact chasing waterfalls. Query is chasing waterfalls.
This reminds me of my mother, and that's never a good thing.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault.
It's not
your fault. It's you show the comments, and people can think no. All right, moving on, please. Because
moving on.
No, I have written mother characters and parent characters in my book so that I can dismiss them because they're being gross. Okay. Okay. This is okay. So, polished beyond a point is relative. Let me give you an example here. Okay. There could be books that have sold millions of copies, tens of millions.
Oh, yeah.
And you find them unreadable. Okay. There's polished and there's enjoyable. We're going to wait for Morgan.
No, I can hear you.
Okay. So, for example, A Wrinkle in Time has sold many, 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 many copies. Okay. It has spawned at least 2 movies. Yes, honey.
Nothing.
Okay. It has, Madeleine L'Engle is beloved by generations of women and men and whatever else. Okay.
Yeah.
I got to page 44 of that book and I gave up because it was all suffering. There was nothing fun in it. It was just, this is a very bad thing. This is a very bad thing. This is bad. This is bad. This is bad. Okay. I don't need that. Okay. So it is incredibly well written for the people who like it. I can't do with it. I just can't. Another book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I can't at all. It just doesn't. That book has sold more than 1 million copies. Okay.
Yep.
So you can have people read your book, read your first chapter, and be like, I can't with this. It doesn't mean it's bad. It means it doesn't work for them. However, if person after person after person, if you can't find anybody who likes your book, right? If your mother goes, that's nice, honey, reconsider. And there are core reasons for that we can look at. Agent submission guidelines, again, as long as they're clear. We've seen agents' policies be unclear. We have seen them want one thing in one place, another thing in another place. Ask them.
Or they say one thing and mean something else, because
Yes.
agents are probably, most agents are worse at describing what they want than most writers are at writing synopses.
And when they
Which
tell you
is
what
pretty
they
bad.
want, it's still not clear, because you can want angels and peanut butter and baseball and gummy bears and plates. And those are plot elements, but that doesn't tell me fantasy, dystopian, middle grade, adult, memoir. Okay? And even if you have the genre and age range down, the approach, right? Because they don't know, they haven't told you exactly what they want out of that book. Okay? Now, confident, positive, and forward thinking. There's confident and there's arrogant. You have not written the best whatever. Do not compare yourself to only people whose books are buyable in the grocery store. At my Harris Teeter, you've been there, yes?
Yeah.
The books and magazines section, right?
Yeah.
You cannot solo comp anyone in that section, because
No.
they are competing on name recognition.
Yeah.
If the name is bigger than the title, that's positive, yes, but arrogant, no. And forward thinking, however, you have not invented a genre.
No.
Your debut, no.
If you have invented a genre, traditional publishing is not for you. You have a very niche book, and you're going to have to work to find your audience, which can be done. I mean, I've met writers making a fine living on it, but traditional publishing is not probably going to be your home.
I'm a member of 2 sex positive writer and reader groups, and the number of times I've seen the letters RH, holy shit, many. It's reverse harem. It's a woman who has a collection or a stable of men that she plays with, and I'm being vague because my kids are right there. And I am choosing to not have them ask me questions about certain body parts or whatever else right now.
Yeah, no.
But when you are talking about something like a genre or an age range in a book, for physical publishing bookstores, that they have to have a place to put it. And if you can sell genreless, indie, or electronically, but in terms of a physical bookstore, it has to have a slot. Now, social media following. We are seeing it happen more. The agents are rejecting people because they don't have followings.
Traditionally, though,
for
and
fiction,
up until
yes,
now,
yes,
right. Before now, you needed one for nonfiction.
Yeah,
it's becoming more so for fiction, especially for like the smaller publishers.
Yeah, because if you have 200 followers versus 2,000, the math is really easy. However, I have not heard of anybody getting rejected because they didn't have enough followers for fiction, and the book was there.
Yeah.
It is incredibly common for nonfiction to have a platform is just a thing. You have to, because
you have to establish your credentials and your audience.
You have to have people who listen to you.
Yeah.
But if an agent is rejecting you if agents are rejecting you for fiction because of your Twitter following, I haven't seen the pitches for the thing is we haven't seen the submission packages, so we don't know if the book is there.
Yeah.
But you don't need Twitter at all to sell books.
No.
You need to have a book.
Yeah.
And then Suzanne Collins is not even on Twitter, is she anymore?
I don't know.
George R.R. Martin sold I don't know how many copies of Game of Thrones and Song of whatever and all this stuff, and I think he did finally get an account. But it's a place to sell. But if the book is there, people are going to talk about it, because I see buy links a lot on Twitter.
Yeah.
And what if a random person telling me buy this book and they're retweeting uncritically is one thing. Morgan saying, hey, you might like this thing, I would listen to you on that. And if I knew what you wanted, because you haven't told me, and I don't care, because if you need help from me on this, you'll tell me. Otherwise, you won't.
Right.
And you don't, I don't think. But rule number one, I don't read much anyway. So you'd be like, Patrick, if you said I love this, I'd be like, is it a page? Yes, it is. It's a piece of flash fiction.
So popping into the comments, Robin says that Orwellian dystopian hard SF picture books are the next big thing.
Okay, what's the source on that?
I do believe he's kidding.
Oh,
They're kidding. Sorry,
so
I don't know gender.
you
I don't
could
know pronouns.
do. I read. Okay, so if you were doing a Frankenstein takeoff,
Mhm.
as a picture book, you could. It's doable. You
Yeah,
have to have. It'd be hard.
I've seen
Oh!
those.
I don't know. A counting book. 1 skeleton, 2 bloody noses, 3 whatever else, right? That would be something you'd have to do real carefully, but you could do it.
I mean, Ring Around the Roses is all about
Are
the.
we really gonna do that, Miss Morgan?
Sorry, I'm sure it was backwards added in there.
I thought I would pretty sure that's hold on.
I don't know.
Hold on, let's just make sure. Are you no? Okay, that's todayifoundout.com. No thanks. It seriously?
Is that the Library of Congress blog?
No. Okay, so I have Snopes saying it's false. I have the Library of Congress saying it's true 9 years ago.
It's from Londonist. It suggests that's what that person claimed. Let's scroll a little more.
Has never been accepted by folklorists for several reasons. Variants. Okay,
The rhyme doesn't show up in English until 1881.
Yeah, that's a little old for that to be about the plague.
Yeah. So
I don't know what the origin is. I'm just gonna say I doubt it. So for the plague, they're talking about to be in the 17th century, and for the rhyme to not show up until the 19th century.
yeah.
Either someone was doing a really good job of hiding, or bullshit. And if it is, it's still a fun thing. All right.
Yeah.
This gets me into a fun story that I happen to know.
Although, for those who don't know what we're talking about, Ring Around the Rosies, Pocket Full of Posies, Ashes, Ashes, We All Fell Down is allegedly about the Black Plague and how you would get rashes in a circle, and people would carry posies of herbs and stuff to try and keep themselves safe. So that's the context for those of you who.
There's no evidence. Okay, so there's a fun thing that happens. Okay, so when you get into the linguistics of
Yeah.
fairy tales, things like that.
Yeah.
First of all, there are types of fairy tales.
Yes.
There are classifications of them. It's so much fun to read about if you're an incredibly big nerd like I am. Peter and the Wolf, I read about this recently, is based on Russian folk tales about a kid named Ivan something, I forget exactly. But my point is that the writer, whose name I've now forgotten, didn't just make it up. This was a very, very common story. And the reason that matters is that this thing was developed to teach kids to differentiate between musical instruments. Because if you know Peter and the Wolf, it's one character per instrument, right? So, there's the flute, there's the drum, whatever else, right?
Oboe.
Well, if you're having to focus, fine, sure.
It's
If
the
you don't know
duck.
the story, he said lovingly, you're focused on stuff you don't know. Whereas if you already know it, you're looking at, that's an oboe,
Yeah.
right? Who's always been that character. That's interesting. I think I'll focus on that. Where this gets fun is if you have a story with a key part such as a beanstalk, okay? If you have a culture that doesn't have beanstalks, you can't have Jack and the Beanstalk. You could have Jack and the Big Old Tree, and it can change as it moves cultures. Linguists and historians and anthropologists, archaeologists, all these people can combine their efforts to discover where a story originated because of where they have evidence that, for example, the anvil was first used, which is lots and lots of fun if you're incredibly nerdy like me. And in fact, one week my resources included stuff about this because I didn't realize other people didn't know this stuff. That you can find out that a story can only be 5,000 years old because whatever thing that if a story uses cheese, for example, I think the oldest archaeological evidence we have of cheese comes from the pottery where they were squeezing the whey out, because cheese is used to preserve a source of protein over the winter.
Yeah.
And so if you have cheese, you can have, I think a store that has cheese in it. If you have a culture that doesn't have bears, okay, because it's too hot for them, you cannot have Goldilocks and the 3 bears, okay? You can have Goldilocks and the 3 rabbits or whatever. But if you don't have it, you have to be scared of the animal too. It has to be an animal that a reasonable person would be afraid of, because you can't just invent fear. Like
Wolves, tigers, lions.
Wolves will work. If you don't have shoes, you cannot have Old Mother Hubbard. If you don't have houses, you can't. And what gets interesting with this is if the children telling the story to have no concept of a house, it won't make sense to them. If they don't know if they're unfamiliar with the concept of things growing in the ground, because, for example, they live in an apartment complex and there really aren't many plants in the area, right? Jack of the Beanstalk, wait, beans grow? I thought you just ate them.
Yeah.
But you go back 1,000 years and they do.
Yeah.
So
let's pop into the comments real quick.
Okay.
Raven writes, was saying that a small publisher dropped a potential purchase because the author didn't have any social media platform whatsoever. No platform gave no confidence that they would do any marketing on their own, so the publisher dropped it. It was a bit scary for someone who doesn't spend much time.
Yeah.
But large following isn't the key, but proof of effort was the linchpin.
You can learn how to do Twitter. It's not hard. The thing is that you would be popping on Twitter with no followers being, hey, buy my book. That gets irritating really fast.
Yeah.
And to do it well, you'd have to, like, not do your book.
Yeah.
But if your point is to do your book, then not doing your book is counterintuitive, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Raven,
sorry. Finishing up Raven's thought. So it was didn't hit our threshold of you must have this many followers. It was more 0 online presence, and a small publisher needs their authors to be doing everything they can to market.
That makes sense, because if you have somebody, one of the publishers, some of my friends I work with, has 300 followers. That's tiny. They are, I think, based out of Ohio, and it isn't that much. So that makes sense. But I mean, at the same time, that's a small publisher versus an agent.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, if your book was good enough, let's say let's for example, let's say that I got an agent to buy onto Brianna, and that agent somehow got Scholastic to want it, right? They have marketing people.
Yes.
Right. That's going to be, now the notion that Scholastic is going to want my book is
pie in the sky.
It's probably the moon, frankly, lady.
Not the right audience.
Well, I mean, okay, let's review the fact that I have abortion references in there. I have cable news being dismissed out of hand as being terrible and it being clearly shown to be terrible. I have significant anti-war. This thing is basically like leftist escapism. And they talk about electing a queer socialist president. So Scholastic, being in the business of capitalism, is probably not going to be all that thrilled about me bashing a network that appears to stand in for CNN. Because Scholastic buys advertising space in places that I am bashing. So maybe not so much. But I mean, I can see it appeals to us. I can see Tor doing it, frankly. Even though it's not really hard science fiction, because people who enjoy science fiction often have problems with authority. He said very gently, super gently.
Except for me, I love authority. Is there a rule I could follow? Because I'm good at following rules.
Morgan, is your, in my defense, I was left unsupervised shirt in the wash, or is it something you could grab right now?
It's in the to be folded pile.
You have that's ambitious. I have a to be.
It's been there for 3 weeks. I mean, it's just where the clean laundry is right now.
See, because part of the thing is that I'm writing about teenagers. Teenagers hate adults. And they hate authority, and they hate rules that don't make sense. Well, a lot of science fiction writers and readers also aren't that thrilled with any of that stuff either. So I can see a science fiction outlet taking a chance. Scholastic is not that outlet.
Yeah,
An
no.
imprint, maybe. But an indie publisher, if I have, let's say, 10 followers on Twitter, and I have many more than that, I
Yeah.
can understand that sort of. But
Yeah.
agents aren't as bound by that.
True.
Okay. No,
Yeah,
I'm
my respect for authority vaguely goes under my superpower is being able to justify almost anything. So if you give me a rule, I can probably think of a good reason I should do it, but I could also think of a good reason I shouldn't. So it depends on my mood that day.
Yeah, I
I
assume the worst
usually
is gonna
use my
happen.
superpower for good.
I assume the worst is gonna happen. In my defense, I'm usually right because have you seen the government? And so when I see someone doing something, I'm like, okay, I'll wait for this to go poorly. And then it does. It's just a thing that happens.
Yeah, I have read too many fairy tales to believe in happily ever after without a lot of work and struggle to get there.
Yeah.
Like fairy tales teach you that it's not just handed to you.
Yeah.
Even if they like people who don't read them are like, "Oh, it's happily ever after mushy stuff." No, they tell you you will struggle, you will work for it, and if you do everything just right and you're the protagonist, it might work out.
Some of it will work out for you, yeah.
But only if you're the protagonist.
Yeah. Mine is not a fairy tale. Good things happen because part of it also is, again, the escapism. I have a scene where the girl confronts her abusive father and he gives her what she wants. Yes, the reason
And a
I do this,
policy and the bleep out of her life.
I had been thinking about this a lot because I have characters who could make it happen, right? But on the other hand, it's so far from realistic as to be almost hurtful, frankly, because it sets up false expectations. However, if you make clear using specific plot elements that you are stacking the deck in ways that are not physically possible in the real world, then the reader goes, okay, I am being allowed to enjoy this utterly fantastical thing in a book that contains utterly fantastical things. I have a character who can basically control people's thoughts and actions, okay? That isn't generally possible. I have someone who turns electric cars into a giant shoveling machine. That isn't technically possible, right? So having set these people up with, I'm using this convenient thing for one thing, I then use it again in a way that is clearly, because here's the thing, okay? We don't get apologies.
No.
Okay. I have a kid who used to torment the shit out of me for years. And I found out last year that he died homeless and starved to death, basically. And like, I was so happy. I was so happy because he can't do anything to me now. But most people don't get the closure of anything. And so to be able to give trauma survivors that person looking at you and saying, no, sorry, they're not going to get that. So,
and it can be really cathartic, seeing what should have happened if they'd been a better person.
Yeah. That's how I
And
handle
not
some
the
of my.
person who, the person taking responsibility for their actions, acknowledging the harm that they caused,
Yep. Oh, yeah.
learning and doing bleeping better.
Yeah. I have my mother was good for a while and has decided to not be. I'm not going to get into specifics because who gives a shit?
Nope.
But I wrote parts of her into various characters.
Yeah.
And in my book world, the aspects of my mother all get resolved because in non-book world, I don't think it's going to happen. She has chosen to be terrible. So I have a character I named for her basically, and I have a character who does things that my mother does conceptually. And part of what we have in books is we can say, okay, I don't have the confidence or the time to get this person to behave, right?
No.
But
they don't have the motivation to learn how to behave.
Yeah, she doesn't. She just decided to stop caring, and that was interesting. And we told her exactly what happened if she did that, and she was okay with that. And I haven't physically talked to her
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a year and a half, something like that.
A friend of mine lost his dad like last night, and he was adopted and never matched up to what they were looking for. And so it
Mhm.
was fraught relationship in the first place. And, loss of hope is hard, but also you don't have to keep trying. And
Yeah,
so there's the grieving the person who's passed and the grieving the relationship you never had, but also the relief of not having to try anymore
yeah, you don't have to do it anymore.
or
Oh, yeah.
not having to care about not trying.
Yeah.
So,
When my mother's mother died 2 years ago, 3, something like that, I forget exactly. 4 years now.
mhm,
They had a tense relationship for about as long as my mother had been alive.
yeah.
And my mother didn't cry at the funeral.
Mm,
She didn't miss the woman.
mm,
She had said goodbye to her when she was in her teens.
yeah.
They didn't get along at all.
I
And
don't know that I've ever cried at a funeral. I've been to many. Um, I mean, many times I have mourned their loss,
mhm,
but I'm not really a tear jerking kind of
mhm,
person in the first place. And a lot of them, it's like they were on the decline and they never would have wanted to live worse than they already
yeah,
were. And so they had a full life. And,
yeah,
while it's sad, it's not a
that
life
reminds
cut
me of
short kind of thing.
something. There's this term, I don't remember the term for it. It's, you have circles of people, right, when someone
Yeah.
dies, and it's this person, and there's the circles and concentric
The
and
support goes
all.
out,
Yeah, yeah,
not
it's
in.
supposed to, yeah. And what happens when you have it's usually a man, because men are not raised with the emotional awareness of women or the emotional concern of women, is that a man will walk up and make the death about him. And usually there will be someone when you're doing it right, there's someone who is assigned to basically take that person out of the situation, get them to purge their needing to feel important, and then go
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Yeah. The closer
Um,
you were emotionally to the person who passed, support should come to you.
yeah,
So if you are the spouse or the child of said person,
mhm,
you should not be comforting the next door neighbor. You
yeah,
should not be comforting the first grade teacher of,
and
they should
by
go to
support,
their friends and not the
yeah,
person who was closer to the source of grief.
and by support, we don't mean vague emotion.
No.
People choose their own. When my father died,
Yeah.
I was looking for the humor in this situation because crying is, obvious. I mean, I'm still
My family is
inconsolable.
100% gallows humor. My
Yeah,
mother was laughing about which neighborhood and who my stepdad's neighbors were gonna be, and, "Oh, these are the good gossips, so he'll get all the good news," and that kinda thing, while picking out the plot, and it's not that she's not gonna miss him, we're just a gallows humor type
she's
of
gonna
family.
find it. Yeah, yeah. What I say to people is I try to find the humor in it because
Yeah,
anybody can find the pain in something, right? I have to find a way to make it funny. And it goes back to, well, it's been a while.
coping
But when I
technique.
was my first full-time job,
Okay.
um, was at a newspaper that printed obituaries. And so my first week there, I'm dealing with death every day,
Yeah, yeah,
and death of kids, and person died after an extended illness, where you know that what they mean is the person used to be full of life and got turned into.
and have been withering in a hospital for a
Mhm.
year
Oh, yeah,
or
and
more.
especially because some people a are sincerely convinced religiously that no matter how gone a person is, they're still there, and so they just have them sit there being medicated when there's nothing left. Um, but I was having to read these things and see the pictures every single day, and the first day I wept because I couldn't take the death. I
Yeah,
had, like,
yeah,
10 dead people on my hands.
right.
And so I developed a naming system for the length of the thing.
Okay.
Short story, book, novel, epic, basically.
Okay.
Because I had to.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
never said a word of this to anybody who,
Yeah.
who was, placed in the obit, because that was a different department.
Right.
But I gotta find the humor in it.
Yeah.
Anything, I
Yeah.
have to. Which is why I have to find the humor in my kids being ridiculous. For example, right now, they're not here. And I am worried that they have found the scissors, because the scissors are a very
Because they've
bad
been
thing.
quiet for at least 5 minutes.
They're not even in here anymore. And I see things that have been cut. Oh, that's one pair of scissors. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, and it really is. I'm gonna go check on them, actually, because I'd like to know if
Okay,
they're asleep.
you go do that. You go do that. Take a minute. So, this is a query helpline. We help people rewrite their queries. We analyze what pitches work, and we raise money for reproductive rights, because children should be a choice, not a default because you got married and that's the next step, not because you made a mistake, not because someone else took your choices away from you. All children should be wanted. And that's why we're raising money for reproductive
This
rights.
is why we are here. Because today was the first day of spring break. And my accomplishment today is I did not kill my children.
I mean, you kept all of them alive all day too.
I kept them alive through a pandemic that
How many
destroyed
meals
us.
did they have?
They were not hungry. Discrete meals, I think I made one. The wife made breakfast and then she left, I think. Something, whatever. I saw people with cereal, I didn't ask questions. But 3 kids in one room, and one of them likes to go off without saying anything. So I'll suddenly see more light in the door area, which means it's open. I hear scraping outside. Okay, she's playing with our toy car without saying anything. There are adults who can handle this. There are adults who can't, and there are adults who don't want to. I don't care why someone doesn't want kids. Okay, I don't. You could have lupus. You could be paralyzed. Or you could simply not
Not
like
have the right
anybody.
temperament for
You
it.
can have someone who doesn't enjoy being around anyone who isn't more than like 30 years old or younger than 30 years old. There's a show called Suits, and one of the female characters doesn't like to know anybody before they're about 18, which is understandable because people younger than that, even the best ones, are pains in the ass. Holy shit. And if
Except
that's
me.
you,
I was awesome as a young child.
I was not. I was an emotional sinkhole.
I think I was raised in a slightly healthier space.
Yeah, I would say that's likely. My parents were both emotionally stunted. My father got better a lot. My mother has chosen to regress. Um, my sisters were around more than I was for that, and they feel that protective services should have been called in at least twice. I wasn't around to know.
Yeah.
But the saying is that everyone has different parents. People in the same
Yeah.
household even do.
Yeah.
But and these are people who wanted kids.
Yeah.
But my father was how do I say this legally? I think I just did. Things were done to him that are crimes repeatedly by multiple people, and
He was parenting through his trauma.
he was the father that nobody was to him, or someone was, maybe it was his sister. But there are things I don't know how he knew how to do them at all, because he was filled with trash.
Sometimes it's see what was done and do the opposite.
Yeah, that's what I've done with my kids' teachers, because my parents, I don't know if they didn't know how to do it or they didn't have the energy for it, but bad things were done to me. Very bad things. And every day the first thing I ask my kids is how school went.
Yeah.
And I push to tell their teachers about things, because if they don't know,
Yeah.
and especially if they don't see me caring,
Yeah.
Yeah. But to have the energy to do that, have the care factor to do that, there are people who don't. And they shouldn't be handling kids.
No.
I have friends who are adults, and I asked one of them, they're men and they're married to each other. And I asked one of them, I said, "Do you want to have kids?" Because number one, to normalize the relationship. Number two, because it's a thing you ask people who are married. He's like, "Well, I don't care, but my husband, is mentally, he's not disabled. He
Mm.
just he doesn't have the attention to responsibility.
Yeah.
But mentally he's 12 years old.
Yeah.
And so they have a lovely relationship.
Mhm.
But a 12-year-old as a full-time caregiver for a child
Does not
is
have the
not
cope.
is no, it's not. And we shouldn't expect it,
No.
honestly, of
And there
either
are
physical.
12-year-olds put in that situation, and they shouldn't be.
Yeah, they should know. As a babysitter, yeah, absolutely. But then you have a support structure. But
That's for
full-time,
brief periods of time, not
yeah.
overnight,
And
you
there are
know?
laws about how long that can happen.
Yeah.
There were when we were teenagers, I think, there was a story out of a local news station. This was back before the internet was big. About 12-year-olds who had been left home alone while their parents went to like Mexico City for the weekend or something like that. And I was like 14 at the time, and I thought I could handle it. But I also had sisters and a brother, and multiple people who have to do it together maybe can a little bit. But 12-year-olds alone for an entire weekend, mm-mm. Because all it takes is one person,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and then they can do something bad.
Yeah.
Because the
I
danger isn't strangers; it's people you know.
yeah. Yeah. If if I were gonna leave a 12-year-old overnight, I would have someone staying with them.
Oh yeah, yeah. The law is pretty clear on how long you can leave a 10-year-old
Yeah.
alone for. I think it's
Yeah.
half an hour.
Yeah.
Um, I have left my 8-year-old alone for 10 minutes, and she's pretty good at being. She's very happy to sit and not try to turn on the oven or use a knife or look for the matches, or
Her
there are
her
various,
sister's on fire.
yeah, or play with it, operate a glass jar. There are very specific concerns that you have with a kid because you can't hide everything. They're
No.
not when they're 8. The
No.
cabinets exist for a reason. But that's me choosing to do that. I would not want Morgan to have to deal with that because she
And
doesn't.
and you're making that decision based on your knowledge of that child and also where that kid is in their cope on that day.
Mhm.
Because I'm sure there are days where you might not want to leave that kid alone because they are
There, yeah.
just not
If she's
coping well
having,
that
yeah,
day.
if she is emotionally fine, then
Yeah.
then she can be alone.
Yeah.
She can watch TV for hours at a time.
Yeah.
I don't mind that. But if she's at the stage where she's throwing things, that's a sign that she isn't able to make emotionally mature decisions.
Yeah.
And frankly, some adults get that way too.
Yeah. Yeah. When adults are like that, they are not adulting.
Yeah. Um, but I can, there are times when I have taken her out of situations
Mhm.
because I know, okay, you shouldn't be in public right now. You will either hurt yourself or something else. And usually it's herself. Like she'll kick a tree. And I know that's going to escalate because she wants to see the tree getting hurt. Well, trees aren't in the habit of being hurt by 8-year-olds who don't have chainsaws. And I don't want her to
Have a
punch the tree,
chainsaw?
or punch the tree or head. There are ways that you can do specific damage to yourself.
Yeah.
Um, where I have to, and I will pick her up and
Yeah.
I'll carry her,
Yeah.
right? Like physically carry her like this, right?
Mhm.
Across my chest,
Yeah.
such
Yeah.
that if she bends out or in, right, I can control that. I
Right.
don't carry her vertically because, uh-uh,
Kicking
um, yeah,
is dangerous with
is
knees and other body parts near her
yes, and
knees.
yes, that is yes.
It's a
I
risk.
can, yes. Even if you're a girl, it hurts. If you're a guy, it would result
It's
in
not so fun.
hospitalization because I
Not
would
so fun.
fall on her,
Yeah.
and that would be very
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
And that is why we. I have
Yeah.
gotten being a parent has made me even more in favor of birth control than I was. I was already pretty strongly in favor of people not having because I don't want people to be miserable,
No.
right? And even if you're gross and I want you to suffer, having a kid that you can just destroy,
No. You
no,
shouldn't be put in charge of
no,
someone
anything,
else who is completely at
anything,
your
yeah.
whims.
Because what'll happen is if that child is biologically yours, the justice system, the CPS, all those people, they have to know there's a problem, and abusers are very good at hiding, very good at hiding. Um, and I wish I didn't know that so well. Um, neglect is very easy to hide. I have, as writers of characters, you have to look at darkness and see, how would I hide this if I could? And part of that is looking at child abuse resources. When I was writing that apology scene, I looked at, how would I do this from a therapist's perspective? Because disastering your way in is a great way to hurt somebody. In that same way, I have thought extensively about how easily I could hide physical trauma. It's bad. And again, if they don't know to look, because you're hiding the bruises, shoulders, right, in the chest, upper places, stomach, places, the tops of your legs are not going to get exposed that much in public. And if swimsuit season is coming, you can start doing different things that are mentally traumatic, but physically will not show up. You can use words in terrible ways. I wish I knew less about this, but I'm writing a character who is physically and emotionally abused for 13 years, and knowing that stuff is a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot, and
he ensures that she is hurt enough to be in pain, but not enough that anybody sees it. And to do this, I had to look up stuff about vinegar poisoning, because if you have enough vinegar, it hurts you, but you can't see the redness around the nose and mouth, right? It's not bad enough. And again, I wish
especially during cold and flu season, or allergy season, or
the cold is another thing. But it's just
because people don't see what they're not looking for.
Yeah, they don't, not at all. And especially if you had to get good at hiding.
And if you internalize that it's your fault,
oh yeah,
you don't want other people to know how bad you were.
I was 17 when I learned that it wasn't my fault. I was in a movie theater, watching Good Will Hunting, and that scene, and that was my introduction to. Because before that, I thought that if I was just the problem with people were targeting me because I was doing something wrong, and I thought if I just behaved perfectly, that they'd leave me alone. When someone wants to abuse you, they'll take any reason at all.
Yeah, people are really, really good at justifying their own behavior.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's studying that for this book and otherwise has been interesting. I got an email from somebody.
I'm just very glad you're in a better place now.
Yeah, it's less bad. I know now that I have far more anxiety than most people. I know now, various, it's interesting, the volume of stuff that, thinking of, planning normal conversations and thinking of the possible reactions to 15 opening lines isn't normal. For a writer, it can be, because you really want to nail that introductory characterization.
I was gonna maybe slide that.
Oh yeah, no, totally, absolutely. Because you want to have somebody say something they would say, right? Yeah. And that takes knowing the character. But for a normal person, I have learned that is uncommon. For a normal person, I have learned that expecting various social disasters and steeling yourself. Yes.
I have learned, especially from reading Captain Awkward and Ask a Manager, that a lot of people will avoid uncomfortable conversations because they don't have a script for it. Mm-hmm. And if you give them a script, they're more likely to actually enforce boundaries or what have you.
Yeah.
I gave a script to a friend who threw parties for over 100 people, and I wanted her to hire this person to work their party, and she hadn't done it for 3 years for her annual New Year's Eve party. And I'm like, here's what you say. Hi, I am a friend of Morgan's, and I met you at such and such a place. I was wondering if you were available for this. And by giving her the script, she finally got through her block and made the call. And so for other boundary setting things, if you have a script, a lot of times it can be easier to go ahead and establish work boundaries, family boundaries, what have you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if there's an uncomfortable conversation that you've been avoiding, script it.
Yeah. When I was looking up the stuff for that meeting between Samantha and her father, a big early thing in that was to plan this thing out.
Yeah.
Where that falls apart, you cannot script everything, number
No.
one.
No.
And people with anxiety,
Yeah.
whether natural or acquired, go, but what if this other thing happens? And partly that's because they expect it to, because something else had broken before. And partly it's them not trusting the fact that they haven't spent 5 hours, and I'm not making that up, agonizing over every possible thing. Because some of us think that if we don't put in the anxiety time, some force will punish us. Not always all of us, but many of us. It's not fun. And add the kids to that, and it becomes way, way worse, because I can protect myself. I can decide to not emote myself, but my kids haven't learned, haven't learned to not care. And asking a kid to not care, and then the person punishes them for caring, like, it's very gross.
And they don't react in necessarily rational or logical ways because they don't have all of those pathways connected yet.
They will not be, their brains will not be mature until they're 25, I think, is the
Yeah.
average age.
Yeah.
Which is why 24-year-old, you have to be 24 to rent a car. It's really weird. You can be 18, or even in case somebody is 17, to shoot a gun at somebody as part of military service.
16
But
to drive, 17 to shoot, 21 to drink,
yeah,
and 25 to rent a
rent a
car.
car, yeah, is very broken.
Insurance knows something that I think the rest of us don't.
I would actually be okay with. Okay, let me preface this. Historically,
Should
water is
we raise the age of juvenile delinquent to 25 if their brains aren't done yet by then?
what would that entail? Because
I
anything
don't
that
know.
raises the age of consent, I oppose generally, because
Yeah.
it's used for coercion.
Oh God, yeah.
And especially when it differentiates between which hold you're using, which gets into homophobia, which is lots of fun.
Yeah.
Here's my big thing.
Mhm.
Historically,
Mhm.
worldwide, water is incredibly dirty.
Yeah.
Wine is not.
Mhm.
Having wine is usually safer, thus,
Mhm.
at any age.
Yeah.
Little bits of it. The notion that it is completely unsafe for children. France called it, but what happens is people give you lots, or you want more of it. But I
And
don't
they
think
used
that.
to water it down.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Yeah. Or you can teach kids to hate it.
Yeah.
My father would give me the end of his beer, which I learned a couple of years ago is terrible. And it was American beer. It was going to be terrible anyway.
I think my hatred of hops may have come from my first job at being at Busch Gardens and downwind of the brewery. So I got that whiff of hops in the morning before I was old enough to drink and
Yeah.
associate it with anything,
Yeah.
positive.
But the thing about our laws is that, as you know, they just say you can't at all.
Yeah.
And the best possible way to make people want to do something, take it away. When my daughter was 1, she was outside. It was a nice enough day, and she picked up a rock. And she put it near her mouth. She was like this with the rock. I did not want her to eat a rock at all.
No.
But I knew the best possible way to make her want it was to take it away. So I let her lick it. I let her do her stuff with it, right? She tested it, because, as you know, people want to taste a thing and they want to feel a thing, right? So
We
she
like
tasted it.
science. It's
She tasted,
science,
yes,
Patrick.
she was. It was rock science. It was the wrong kind of geology. So she tasted a different part of it, right? Because maybe it's different, because one part of a strawberry tastes like nothing, another part of a strawberry tastes like strawberry.
It's true. It's true.
And so she tasted it again, another part of it. She bit it. And then she put it down, because she had established through her 1-year-old testing, this does not taste good there. or there, and I cannot make it into a smaller thing. This is not food. This is some other thing. I am putting it down. And in the days since then, she has not tried to eat a rock. She goes outside, doesn't interest herself in rocks. I let her discover for herself. And in fact, I turned it into a blog post for somebody. Why I let my daughter try to eat a rock. Now, some people might be concerned about her teeth for that.
She was 1?
She was 1. Those teeth are falling out anyway. And she can't generate that much force. Now, if I were taking no. If I were going to take, no, that's a bad idea too.
I do
There are
have a
ways to hurt.
chipped tooth from
There-
right after my big teeth grew in, from climbing under the bed and coming up a little too fast and hitting the edge of the metal frame.
Oh. Yeah, one of my kids has chipped teeth from falling too much, and she ran. But you've seen children run; they
Yes.
lift their feet like a millimeter above the ground, and then they're surprised they fall because they're not running with the whole up and down. They're running like this, and that's very, very bad.
I do love toddlers jumping, where they bend their knees and then they tiptoe and then they go boop.
And they get like this far off the ground. Mommy, I jumped. It's like every part of them goes up and up and up, and the pants go up and yeah, it's like you couldn't slide a piece of paper under them, but they jumped. Yes. And then when they're around 12 or 13, they start being able to actually get height on them. Yeah, that's it's a good way to show
maybe
age.
I should learn to do the box jump thing. I hear it's good for
Oh,
your,
that's a great way to kill your shins.
I do like my shins.
I saw a video of a girl doing
and
that.
I are friends.
And I mean a girl, like a 6-year-old girl, and she kept on doing it. And I'm like, this hurts to watch. The thing is, she was choosing to do it, and it wasn't like bloodying her.
Yeah.
She was getting her slamming her whole shin into it, and there was an adult there. And I got the sense that, okay, I wouldn't do this with my kids because my kids would get hurt. But this girl, everything that I'm seeing and hearing is that she's okay. And at that point, I go, okay, you know what? Not for me. But that I think her father was like a personal trainer. So this person knows more about kinesiology.
Like do what their parents do.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, totally. But it's one of those things where, like,
do you have any writer kids?
See, my daughter has written. I have a story called "The Fidget Spinner Adventures," which I have not yet queried because I still have to complete the thing.
I stole a fidget from my roommate's kid that I've been fidgeting with during the. It's a pop socket, but it's also an octopus with like all like pops all the way around. So I've been playing with that while we're on stream because it's a quiet fidget. I'm not clicking
that clicking thing, right? Yeah. So my child was I have the first page of the thing, and I gave her the text of it, and she was writing her own version with various illustrations that she had chosen. This is what she does because she sees me writing stories. Parts of it are very cringe, and they're like, okay, one day you'll learn that that's not how that should be done. Not hurting anybody. If I did a video of it, you'd be like, okay, clearly she's 8. Clearly she's she's got that sort of bubbly-ish writing. But whatever, it's a thing that she enjoys because she sees me writing the stories.
Yeah.
And I sent one to her teacher, who said she loved Catherine's voice, which is a very odd word for a teacher to use, but she knows. She's in her 50s. Sure. So she learned some things. But I have not sent more because I'm not that guy.
No.
I'm not trying to use my second grade teacher, my kid's second grade teacher, to vet,
no
4,000 word stories that haven't been edited because most of that is a first draft.
Oh dear.
Well, she likes the idea. So I told her about the bio tapestry.
Yeah.
And it's a very easy thing to use as a thing to structure a story around because it's got discrete things happening. And you can use it as a basic history lesson or math, whatever, lots of things. And that's what they do. And then she wanted to take various parts of it, the horses and the arrows, things that are novel to her. And she wanted to basically place herself within that world in a way that gave her agency. And I
Sure.
explained to her what agency is because we know me. Um, and then I let her, do her thing. That I still have to add 3 chapters to that because I was at like 3,700 words, and that's before editing. And I know that editing is going to take that down to down.
So, editing might delete words for you. For me, it both deletes and adds
It
words
replaces.
because when I write, I focus a lot on my characters' internal dialogue, what they're seeing, what they're feeling, what they're thinking, what
Yeah.
their opinions are.
Yeah.
And when I go back through, I try to add more about what are they seeing, smelling, hearing,
Yeah.
what is the movement happening, what are other people doing
Yeah.
in the same space.
Yeah.
So I try to externalize a little more of what's going
You
on
have
while
to nail the emotional decisions, basically.
exactly.
Because in the story,
That's what
a
I
lot of
care
it,
about when I'm
yeah.
reading.
Well,
I wanna
and
know why the
also
character and what they're doing.
for plot perspectives, you have to have justification for them
Yeah,
doing whatever thing. Well, if you don't have the emotional decisions correct, bye bye. Because you can only have so many. I'm going to do this because it's a bad thing because it gets old.
yeah,
So in my first draft,
yeah,
I focus on why it's happening and the emotion of it because I can't have someone happy doing something sad. It just doesn't make sense. But in subsequent drafts, I'm tossing a lot of that because it's free writing, and
right,
90% of free writing could just
yeah,
die. It's a great thing to have, like to understand it, but then you
right,
can toss it because you don't need it more.
yeah,
But then in the second draft, I get into getting away from white room syndrome.
yeah,
However, my characters are so free to feel things that boiling that down to only what I need takes a ton out, which is fine.
right, yeah,
Um, but I would doubt 3,700 words for a first draft, even with adding details about stuff. One of the characters is in a wheelchair, for example, and being intentional about having that wheelchair be present from the start um, requires you to use words about it. But even with that, I would expect it to be sub 25. And
yeah,
a chapter book is going to have to be. I looked at the lengths for the. So there's a Magic School Bus for our generation, but
sure.
there's another series called the Magic Treehouse.
Yes.
Um, and I looked at the first book in that series is like 4,700, I think. And as a rule, the first book in a series is usually going to be the shortest one because they have to prove they can sell. And once they prove that, they can go into bigger stuff.
Yeah,
Um, I believe the first one is about dinosaurs. And if you put the word dinosaur on something,
yes,
it's like putting the word bridal on something or, newborn. It's going to sell because people like dinosaurs. I
yeah,
use the bio tapestry, which is less of a seller. But that's, yeah, I have I if you're familiar with the tapestry, it has Latin inscriptions all along the top telling what's
okay,
happening. Well, I use those as chapter headings. It's very much out of copyright. It predates copyright law, in fact. Um, do we have a question, or are you talking to somebody?
oh, I was asking the audience if they had any.
Oh, okay.
So,
So,
Patrick, should I
so
torture
Morgan,
you?
are you gonna throw nouns or prepositions or phrases at me?
I might. So right now I'm editing, revising my space fantasy, and I'm trying to decide where the line between world building and plot setting and info dumping is.
Oh God! All right, show it to me, and
We don't
I'll.
have to look at it, but I thought since it's what I'm working on right now,
You go
now
ahead.
might be a good
You
time
go right
to
ahead.
okay.
You go right
I
ahead.
just
I will
plunked the
look at it
first
for only
4
things you
pages,
want me to look at it for. Because
but
if
yeah,
you're still playing around with the structure of it, then I'm not concerned with how you're using verbs and nouns. I'm concerned with the concepts and the conceptual flow. Um, because you don't want to nail down word choice until you have all this stuff done. Because otherwise, you're cleaning dishes as they're being used, basically. Um, And
Yeah.
a good editor can
Yeah.
put aside their concerns about mechanics and
Right.
even stuff like hyphens or comma use or whatever. I'm
Yeah.
not concerned with that.
No.
I'm concerned with,
Yeah.
does making this thing teal make sense?
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead and put it
you're
up,
gonna
and
hate the voice. It's very lyrical and descriptive and fairy tale, but deal.
I've handled that before. I've written that before, frankly.
Oh yeah, yeah. So here we go.
Okay.
And I just sent you the share, so you should be able
Okay.
to.
Hold on. Let me get that.
Should I? I'm gonna do the horrible thing where I read it aloud for people.
Thank you for
Patrick
warning me.
doesn't do well with listening while reading. So, once upon a time, in the days long to come, there sat a little white house made of shells and mud on an alien shore. And in that house lived a woman who had once been the girl from the stars. The woman was called Vasilisa, and she dreamed of sailing the stars once
Let's see
more.
here.
But dreams are for children, not grown women. Vasilisa picked a path across the rocks and the piles of pungent kelp like, a scent as salty and bitter as the sea. Pools of shops littered the coast, each run by one of the boneless, eight-limbed Ricarians whose world this was. The one on the far left usually had the clams. Another basket, she called out, approaching the pool. The chill alien wind tore a few long brown tendrils loose from her braid. She tucked them back and waited, certain she'd never had to deal with stray breezes back when she lived on the family ship. Back when she'd sailed the aether stream that flowed between solar systems and worlds, back before her parents had forsaken her and left to serve penance so they could afford to fix the family ship's stellar sail. The shopkeeper's eye stalk swiveled toward her, then he waved her forward with one of his front tentacles. His lean, rubbery mantle, mottled with its natural blues and purples, stood halfway out of the pool, nearly reaching her hip. Stretched his second set of tentacles forward, and took her empty basket. So soon? The shopkeeper sang in his own haunting tonal language. Years of planetside schooling had Vasilisa almost fluent. She could easily comprehend their song and wrote the Ricarian tongue as she'd been taught, using vowels with A as the highest pitch and U as the lowest, plus a few consonants, filling in poor approximation for hummed noises and beak clicks. The other humans and your cousins seem to be favoring them this week over the usual human fare, she replied in the human trader tongue. Her clumsy attempts to sing their language could only be understood by the beleaguered Ricarian who taught humans his tongue for longer than her 20 shipper years. 27 years, as they counted here on Rika. The shopkeeper hauled the now filled basket onto the ledge, water streaming out of the weave. Vasilisa swiped the combrace she wore on her left forearm over his scanner, and she heard the chime in her head, registering the payment. Anything else? He sang, his au reddening with the pleasure of making a good sale. No, thank you. May we sing together soon? May we sing together soon, he replied, while his flowing tentacles rearranged the shop's larger baskets for the next customer. I think I'll just stop there.
Okay. What thing first? So, I think okay. So, what draft is this roughly?
I'm trying to polish it to query.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just suggest something. A couple things.
Yeah, sure.
So first off, the wind or something else causing hair to be whatever is an opening page concept that is very common.
Yeah.
I don't love it. However, I recognize it's used a ton. So in the terms of sellability, it's there. My thing here is we already have the wind implicitly in the previous paragraph. Because if you have a scent and there is wind, I would try to introduce the wind up there.
Okay.
Also, on a more structural thing, that looks like a modifier to me.
Yes.
It's confusing, and I'm wondering if you can change the name of it because I don't see value in having like is a word that ends a modifier, and so to me, it's sort of it's jarring.
I could italicize it. It's a
no.
human approximation for something that's sort of like kelp and it's alien.
But it's still a modifier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't want to call it kelp because it's not, but I wanted to convey the concept.
Okay.
So
this is getting very granular, but also people will read it and they won't be sure why they don't like it.
Yep.
I'm telling you why they won't like it.
Yeah.
Quasi-kelp might be a better way to do it because that is still a noun.
What? I'm sorry.
Quasi-kelp, pseudo-kelp, something like that.
Okay.
Something that uses a noun. And then a scent can't be a pile. That's more of a thing you can fix. Otherwise, I'm being too granular, I know.
Nope, that's fine.
Okay.
I called it pungent. So I'm describing what the pungentness is of the kelp lake.
Right, but you're okay. Piles of stuff, right?
Yes.
Pick the path along a physical thing and a physical thing. Ascent as blah blah blah. A pile of something isn't a scent.
Yes.
Whose scent was blah 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 would be it. But that we're getting at I'm trying to not be mechanical here, but as you can see, I'm not doing very
that's
well.
fine. That's fine. I'm just
okay.
So
this feels very.
Wanted to tell how it was pungent. So how would I do that? I feel like that is a mechanical difference that doesn't actually change the structure of the sentence or the inferences. Okay.
Also, I know that's a verb now. Was it a verb before? Yeah, I changed it now to a verb. If you had less than half a minute in as the first. But again, Morgan knows she can change this back easily.
Oh yeah. I gave you a separate draft and I will take what I want and ignore the rest.
Yeah, totally. Because there are many ways to write this stuff, and she knows exactly what I do.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what she does, and I'm totally fine. I also know that if she comes back and says, "Hey, I didn't get any requests," I'm gonna be like, "Did you use the verbs?" And she, in turn, is free to tell me to go shove it.
Yeah. This was me purposely trying to be lyrical, which is more adjective and descriptive than my default.
And see right here, pools of each one by one of the this feels a little sort of trapped semantically. You couldn't think of a better way to do this, is to me what it looks like. This I love. This is what we talk about when we're talking about someone who's using sufficient language without a whole lot of dressing up to convey a simple concept so you get out of the way. And you say, okay, this is what it is, right?
Some of the people are going to be reading this for the world building. Some are going to be reading for the story. So I'm trying to give enough for everybody.
So I would say, again, the wind I would put up there.
Yep.
But the reason that you can't do that with this in that way exactly, okay, that above paragraph is conceptually about the coast.
Yes.
This paragraph is about her.
Yes.
Mixing those is hard to do.
Yeah.
You can. I generally wouldn't. Because you have to,
Yeah. This is kind of the stakes paragraph.
That's interesting, he said mutely. Hold on. Okay,
this is what I turned from 7 prepositional phrases into 3.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that actually. Nobody is surprised by that though.
I know. I tried to add a little clarification by adding a verb.
You care. All right. I don't love the repetition of back. I understand the
Mhm.
reason for it,
Yeah.
but
One of the things for this story that I really wanted was it to have a read aloud flow
mm,
that had that kind of almost wave-like repetition that you get in a
uh-huh,
lot of fairy tales.
okay.
So that was a voice choice. But I'm hoping I don't overdo it.
Okay, this is mechanical again. You see this thing right here?
Yep.
This is a comic splice.
Yep. Why are comma splices bad again? I forgot.
Um, wow, this is the biggest softball I've ever been given. I'm just totally not okay. You're joining things
Uh-huh.
in a way that is gross, let's say, being totally technical language here. Um, it's you can do it. The character has to be using it for dialect purposes, and I don't see that here.
Okay.
It is often a case of free writing, and then you don't realize what you have because
Mhm.
you're not looking at it like you're me.
Yeah.
Um,
So so I understand these 2 things happen sequentially, but it's kind of like they look and waver over, and it feels like a continuation of the move?
commas.
Okay. If
There
I toss
is
an "and,"
there's a
we're
more
good?
concrete division, and
Sure.
mechanically, that's I mean, there's ways to do that, right? But
Okay.
if you want to have periodals to stop you because you're saying,
Yeah.
okay, this grammatical thought is complete and discrete, and here we are, it's done, and now we have a new one. It might be related, but it is still discrete in some way. Whereas a comma goes, keep going.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And the ways in which you can follow a comma, so many. We could have someone toward her, behind her, around her. We could have that with a preposition or an adverb
Yeah.
chain. We can have a preposition of her. We can have another independent clause, whatever.
Sure.
Um, what you don't want to, okay, you can do that. Yeah. What you don't want to have is
Mhm.
a rough return to the shopkeeper, which we
Sure.
had with then he blah blah blah, and
Yeah,
whatever is fine
yeah.
there. Um, my only concern,
Mhm.
okay, we have a preposition here,
Yep.
preposition here, preposition here, preposition here. We don't have one here.
Oh.
So I would say, and I am excruciated at this notion that I'm going to say to you, I am not even telling you to add a noun. Yes, you'll want to flag this moment in this video. You'll want to bookmark this. You may want to get some cake. Are you ready for
Patrick
me to say?
just told me to add a preposition!
Do you? I'm going to say this. So, are you ready to enjoy this fully, Morgan? I'm going to enunciate
Wait,
this.
isn't toward a preposition?
Son of a bitch, it is.
So we're good.
Yes. But
Okay.
if we weren't, I was prepared to tell you, Morgan, are you ready for this?
Yes.
Morgan, I recommend. I'm sorry. Morgan, I recommend adding a preposition to this clause.
Yes. But I already had one, so we're balanced. So I
Yes,
should
but
leave
I
it
still
alone.
wanted to
Okay.
give you that moment
Thank
because
you. I
I
appreciate
care
that.
about you, and as soon as I saw you doing this, I hurt you too. Yes, I knew, I knew that you would have this wonderful moment, and I could make you happy. And I don't mind prepositions. It's just
Yeah, yeah, they
you
have
have to
their
use them
place.
deliberately, right?
Yeah.
It's like
I mean, you almost thought I missed an opportunity for a preposition.
oh yeah, I thought you had because I'm it's long is the thing. See, prepositions,
Yeah,
most of them are really tiny, right? And you have
yeah.
of, with,
Yes.
of, of.
Yeah.
They're all tiny.
Yeah.
Okay, I would go he.
Where are we? Oh, okay.
I've moved on to the next small preposition.
Sure. No, that's fine.
And here again, you want to get in and get out. What we had was this massive thing. Now, for a chapter book, maybe.
Sure.
Because they have to be more intentional. But that's...
Okay.
Ooh, I don't love this. It looks initially like you're missing the verb like had as a modal, and you're missing like a made or something. I understand what you're saying here.
Yeah.
I think you do need that verb just for the sort of comfort of it semantically. Made.
Okay. I'm comfortable with that addition.
She easily comprehended. This is ooh. I understand that you're saying that it's that species song, but right here, your antecedent is singular, right?
Okay.
So if you want to do there, I would go
songs plural.
Correct.
Okay.
Something like that is an option. This is what you would call, and I'm inventing the term, a world building slot. Like you've seen what's in the queries, right? We have,
like I almost wanted to footnote this part because before I got into their language and referring to stuff in their thing, just because people are going to want to know how to pronounce the shit.
Do that.
But this was like the shortest way I could.
Is this accurate to the book?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So in the human chapters, Ricarian is italicized, and Ricarian chapters, human is italicized.
That makes sense. I don't love that.
I thought the difference between a colon and a hyphen was stylistic decision.
Most people often use em dashes as escape hatches, and also many of them use them to introduce facts.
Okay.
A colon is a more definite way. It's also more formal. So, I can see it being used as a factual thing. I don't love it.
Okay.
But and it's definitely not me trying to say don't use em dashes, because you've seen I use em dashes like I use socks. I use them a ton, but I recognize in my own writing that I use em dashes as escape hatches.
Yeah,
and that's common. It can be characterization, but mechanically speaking, it's not the job.
I think I've decided to use em dashes instead of parentheticals. As like additional tidbits.
Oh, that's a real interesting thing there. So,
like
parentheticals, because they're so big and round, act as sort of closets.
Okay.
So when you put something in parenthetical, you're saying that you're
it's an aside.
Yeah, well, you're making it subordinate to something else. Whereas an em dash emphasizes it because that's all that space and it's flat. So you're clearing the way, basically.
Yeah.
Visually for information. So
I think I'm okay with that decision, at least here.
I'm just saying, like, from a visual perspective. And people don't always realize this, but part of editing is to be using physical stuff in a way that respects the psychology of it. Because look at this. You see all that space there?
Yeah.
All that space, bottom and top, right?
Right.
That's clearing the way for the big thing that's coming. Whereas this
is snuggling it. It hugs it.
It's you might have thought than that, right? You just engulfed it.
Sure.
Okay, I can't tell if this is too much of a gap. One of the things you have to watch out for, as you know,
Mhm.
is you have a line of dialogue and you have explanation, and then you have more
Yeah.
dialogue from somebody else.
Yep.
The question is, has the reader forgotten what you were talking about?
Yeah.
And while you're
We switched
editing,
back to actions, so I thought it was okay. Like, if it was that much world
no, this is
description and
okay. This is
info
all
dumping.
world building right there, and then that's talking, right?
Yes.
What I can't tell on this editing pass is if
Uh-huh.
this is too long, right?
Oh,
It's
okay.
not possible to get that perspective because there's dwelled on this stuff on this stuff
Right.
right here for so long, right?
Yeah.
So that would be something that
Yeah.
would be a thing to do as your editing pass is
Right.
to look at your stuff between dialogue.
Yeah.
And
I
if you
I
have
was
to
trying
cut
to just
stuff,
I
mhm.
couldn't make it a footnote, and it
Well,
didn't
no, if
fit
you
later
okay,
in the story.
let's pretend,
Okay.
let's just for the sake of explaining this, that
Sure.
we have decided that
Mhm.
this part right here makes it too long.
Yeah.
You could put that in somewhere else, or you can have it be complimented on it by whoever, right?
Yeah.
There are ways to put it in. If you had to cut it right here,
Mhm.
there are
Yeah.
ways to put it in somewhere else, whether
There
as
are, but I
mhm,
start using Ricarian words earlier, and I think the reader wants to know.
okay, you could put it in earlier then, right?
Yeah, it's on basically page 2.
Okay.
Exactly page 2.
But I'm saying that if this
Yeah,
paragraph, if we decided that you
yeah,
had this was all you can do to
yeah,
keep within the framework of a dialogue, you could
sure.
have okay,
Mhm.
let's specifically this is oral, right? You're hearing this. You
Yeah.
could say that she um you could take the wind part of it, right, where you're using the wind above,
Mhm.
and have that play with the vowels and the beat clicks, all right? Because you could say how audible it would be there this language with that wind happening. It's not the best option maybe, but it exists.
Yeah,
No?
yeah. This just
Um,
seemed to be the most concise way I could put it,
well,
and the
yes,
most
I'm right.
rational spot to put
Two and
it.
a half lines is pretty short. However,
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
5 lines between
yeah,
dialogue lines,
yeah,
which again, another additive has left return. I'm just saying if you
yeah,
had decided,
yeah.
because I would recommend if I were doing this as a structure, if we were at say draft 6 or whatever,
Right.
and I were reading it like you want me to do it all the way through, right?
Yeah.
Which would be a lot for me. But I do it for you, and you'd have verbs in there. But I would probably say this is too much between lines of dialogue
I
because
mean,
people fall in.
comprehended is a verb,
Yes.
and
However,
writing,
5 lines between lines of dialogue.
and been taught.
I would usually recommend people go with fewer
Yeah,
because you need to have because
yeah.
you're not gonna when I see this line here, okay,
Mhm.
and then this line down here, physically that's a lot of separation for a
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah. Okay, what if I ah, I could move this into the next paragraph, but do we have too much space after that?
Actually, this is good because okay, so let's imagine. I'm not going to do it. Let's imagine
Yeah,
that you showed the comprehension,
yeah.
and then you had the explanation of this stuff with the
Mhm,
backstory and during the action, which doesn't have any dialogue in it, and that
mhm.
way we have so soon the other humans. She replied, the shopkeeper hauled with all that explanation where there's no dialogue to um, be disrupted by it. Right? That makes sense. You might have to reorganize it a little bit,
Yeah.
but that's something that you can do. Oh, that's gonna get okay. You can cut a line from this solidly. This right here is you can toss a line from that.
Yeah, I'm just establishing
Yeah,
her age,
yeah.
and I thought it was a cute little world building tidbit, and it shows she's
What is
been at
he?
on planet for a while.
Okay, empty basket, filled basket. What is she filled with? Did I see her filling a basket with something?
No, she handed him the basket. Yes, you saw him hand her the
Yeah.
basket
What is she filling it with?
right here.
I don't think I saw that.
She went to the one with clams and she said another basket. And he said, so soon? And she got another basket.
Oh, that's the wind thing. Yeah, that's. Oh, wow. Yeah, that is forever.
Yeah.
I would maybe give it the scent of the clams or something to
Sure.
compete with the scent of the kelp.
Sure.
Something because it's been Paige,
Sure.
and we've been talking about a language instead of what's in her basket.
Yeah.
And again, something that you want to do sort of casually. You don't want to emphasize, oh boy, look, I have clams now,
Yeah.
because that feels forced.
Yeah.
And the trick is to make it be casual and yet clear. Oh, that's over. That's.
I
Okay, I know what
undid
you're trying to
everything
do
I
here,
just did.
but okay. So she wore on her left forearm over, and when I see over, I'm expecting another body part, clothing, something, right? Then we
Oh,
get
oh
a
no.
scanner. Yeah.
She's wearing the combrace and then she
I
moves
understand what
like
you mean, but the way
Yeah.
you've done it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just
What
bold
if
that and you can.
the combrace on her left forearm and I just delete this?
It's still consecutive. You see, you've got consecutive prepositional phrases, and usually when that's true, it's because they're conceptually nested.
Yeah. Yeah.
For example, for people who don't understand what that means, an example of this would be on her left forearm over her patch of kelp. Whatever. The idea is that the forearm is a body thing, and the over is also leading to a body thing. And then we get the discord here of a scanner. So we need to reorganize the concepts here. And I'm not suggesting anything there because I don't know the scene that well, and Morgan does. She has the whole world in her head, so she can come back with something.
It's
because
a
I would
thing, and
expect.
she's wearing it, but it basically works like swiping your card over.
Yeah,
a
I imagine
reader.
it does. Yeah. And I would expect a decent critique partner will flag that and say, hey, mechanically this needs a thing. And if you don't have someone like that, this is straight up world building.
I'm basically saying he smiled, only they turned red.
All right, this is I hate comma while.
Okay.
But other people don't care.
Yep.
There are things that it's just a thing. You might have 5 of what's wrong now.
No, I'm just trying to figure out how to reorder that sentence, and I'm so stuck.
It's also 11:49, and you've been tired for at least half an hour. I saw you yawning, lady. It's fine. All right. Okay.
Maybe we scratch the combrace earlier and we just swipe it now.
But then you'd have 2 trope movements. You'd have the hair tuck and have that scratch. You're 1 move away from having
I don't
compact
think it
and looking at yourself before.
matters what arm it's on.
Her arm combrace?
But nobody knows what the fuck a combrace is. I'm sorry, pardon my language.
This does imply she has more non-arm combraces, but that's a problem for future Morgan.
And I want to establish here that she can hear and see things, like the combrace thing can send things into her head.
That was clear.
Okay, good. because later on we get visuals inside somebody's head, and somebody was like, "Whoa, that came out of nowhere." So I want to at least
To
establish.
me, it's a maybe a little wooden, but for an early draft like this, we're looking at making sure things are understandable.
Yeah, yeah,
And also making sure we don't have too much stuff going on in what is basically just her buying clams.
Yeah.
And if I'm being honest,
Mhm.
This is how many words? Let me see. How does
The whole thing, or just to hear? Just to hear is 441. The whole thing I put up here was just 800 words.
for buying clams? How
Establishing
important?
the setting and her goals.
Yes, yes. How important is the purchase of clams?
I think I'm just trying to show that she's stuck as a waitress,
Stuck.
and she really
Oh,
wants to escape that life.
I didn't know she was a waitress. I didn't. She doesn't feel stuck to me. But I'm reading mechanically rather than emotionally.
Yeah. We get into the melancholy pretty soon.
Okay. A future draft, it'd be good to have a hint of that earlier, like in the first page or two. Because if I don't know that she's sad, well, she's doing something for work, right?
I mean,
And she doesn't like her job, right?
forsaken. I thought that was some level of foreshadowing.
That's her parents and not her job, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So. Next page is she'll be in trouble if she dallied. So. That sentence stinks.
Something about this doesn't work for me. I don't know why.
Where are we?
I think it's the modifier order. I'm not sure though. Or the comma, something. Isn't there a word for bright blue?
There are many. There's cerulean.
But the problem there, as you know, is the bigger a word you use, the more important you make it.
Yeah.
And all we have right now is
Azure.
mid-grade, which I think is the point, right?
Sapphire.
Sapphire, that's a gem name. That's
why I'm going Azure.
You're still looking at Azure
Cobalt.
sticks out there. It's a thing to look at later, maybe.
Yeah.
You want to say something that's interesting but not exotic, I would say.
Lapis, no.
That's another gem.
Cobalt.
That's a non-metal. If you say cobalt, some people will think they're made of cobalt.
Yeah. And that's why I think I said bright blue.
Yeah. Yep. Sensible.
Where were we on the blue?
You were looking at words, I'm not, because I don't know the boots.
Oh, right here.
My concern again is that you have not make it too big of a word.
Okay.
Honestly, I just bold it and look at it later.
Okay.
This feels very disruptive to me.
Okay.
Because we have the dripping, we have the splashing, we have the shore. I'd forgotten there are rocks because of the way we're reading this, we're going so slowly because that's the thing.
Yeah.
So.
But we're honestly, a page later.
Yeah. An option for making the rocks less disruptive, although that's only part of the disruption here, is to have the rocks be so that she walks around or on, whatever.
Yeah.
And then,
I mean, the next sentence says she hiked up the rocky shoreline. So maybe to the edge of Rikasburg and then do we drop the tidbit or do we just delete it?
You can do it. I think it's not it's disruptive in how it's done because this sentence doesn't have rocks and it has her going away, and then
Yeah.
we have that jutting out of not going away, but hey, by the way, these are human settlements, and then we have returning to the setting. So it's a matter of zooming way out. It's you're here and then you go zoop zoop, right? That was too fast. You're here and then you're zooming over there and then back here. There's probably you can, but if you put it with the transaction, you delay the transaction. That's a bad idea.
So putting it in the next sentence doesn't work like I
I
just
think
did?
that yeah, that's okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I would again have a rock mention here. Somewhere in that paragraph, in that second half of that paragraph.
Okay.
Up to on of on. Wow, that's a bunch of prepositions. Okay. Okay. Oh, I don't like that.
Yeah, I'm not in love with it.
I'm gonna bold it. You can figure out something. I'm not sure if I'm doing it right now, but something's wrong with it.
But that was as close as I could get.
Yeah,
What's happening.
I mean, and I think this is a good lesson in you can't fix everything. Sometimes I'll be editing. I'll be like, I know I don't have the brain to do this right now, so I'm
Yeah.
bolding it so I can fix it later. And then
Sure.
later, okay, I found a solution because there's a part of your brain
Yeah.
that keeps this going in the background.
Yeah.
And so as long as you give it the information it needs, it can do this stuff while you're doing whatever else, right?
Yeah.
I was taking math. I think I told you this story a couple times, well, at least once. I was taking a math test a number of years ago, and I was like, I see this problem here. I can't fix this now, but I'll give myself the information. Come back, I do the rest of the test. I come back to it half an hour later, and the solution just flew out of my hands. Like it was all I could do to keep pen on paper.
You'd warmed up.
Yeah, and of course, it involved verbs.
Yep. Wait. It was math. How does math involve
Equals.
Now? Oh. Times, divided, subtract. Those are all verbs. I get it. I get it.
But lots of nouns. The antiderivative of blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Edge of. Okay, this is awkward. But I can fix it. Okay, so there to me, we just said settlements, and she's not at the settlement. She's at the edge of it.
Yeah.
Feels a little awkward to me. So, but we can do this.
Okay. Is that sentence too long now?
See, that's a problem for future Morgan.
There she caught her breath.
So much. Okay, used to there is not. I love that. Used to, as you know, has two basic meanings.
Yeah.
And it's a tricky thing to line it up properly. I would actually go
that allowed.
That's the permission concept. I don't love that.
What?
Allowed speaks to permission connotation.
Oh yeah,
that's why I bolded it, right? Because you're gonna think of something better later.
Yeah.
And here, watch this. Ready? White space.
Okay. Bring it. I like some white space.
You had the transaction stuff. You had these brief paragraphs up there. Then you have a relatively long for the. You have up here. You have a bigger thing in description, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 short paragraphs. Then 2 long ones. Right, we're getting into some heavier stuff. Okay, and then a quick thing. Right not only is she catching her breath, the reader has a place to sort of stop and say, okay, let me think about, oh God, that's even worse.
I know.
You'll fix it later, okay? It's a thing we flagged. And then you'll find a solution later. But used is it's so tricky. It's like had. It's you can do it, but you gotta really set it up well.
Utilized.
Bad Morgan.
I'm a software engineer. We use the word utilize all the
I
time when it
know.
should just be used.
I know.
Oh, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the software engineers, we like to sound pretentious and we use the word utilize when it should just be used.
I used to do publishing in corporate training.
Sure.
Holy the utilize in that. It was just, and the reason I do it is people who are being convinced that they need to learn something want to feel smart. So you use bigger words with them. It was utilized every time. And part of me died. It's awful.
What if I made hiked up the rocky shore into a longer sentence? Like, made her way up while the basket splashed upon her. Worse, not better.
So can we focus on where we are instead of where we used to be?
I'm sorry.
And then you can ask me when
my brain keeps circling them.
Write it up there in whatever your tentative language thing is. I use brackets because here's the thing. You're not always going to remember what part of your stuff you want to keep and what part of it is notes. I use brackets and bold and italics, stuff like that to mark up stuff. So I come back later and I go, oh, right, this is something I want to add somehow, play with it in some way, add the concept, whatever thing. And then I do it and I'm done. I delete the markup, basically. Because your draft, right, your rough work, it doesn't have to be pretty. It has to be understandable to you.
Yep.
And if someone else reads it and they go, well, this is weird, go away. All right. It's
nobody
like,
sees my rough draft. My rough draft is for me.
Yeah. It's like when you're sewing, right? You use lots of little needles and pins and clips and all that to hold things in place. And later, right, a week later, whatever, when you're done, when everything's sewn into place, you take out all 500 pins and you put them back in your pin box. It's a process thoroughly respected. I will go rounds with anyone who suggests that the way that people were very careful at stuff do it is not appropriate, because I've seen it and it's just fine. Same thing with any other process. With people understand, and if they don't, they can holler at me, because everything isn't pretty, and process has to be effective. It doesn't have to be pretty.
Nope.
I'm going to toss for a moment. I'm going to suggest you infuse it into peaked, and nobody is surprised that I'm suggesting
but I echo the moment in the next paragraph, and that's why it was there.
Morgan?
I know. Go ahead. Carry on.
Let's just see what happens, right?
Peaked for a moment.
Morgan.
Yes.
Really?
What? Am I using the wrong gray?
See, here's the thing. I have a thing against G-R-E-Y.
I'm sorry.
It's a personal thing. I see people talking about gray, G-R-E-Y, tons on, because people like the look of it, I think. And because
I've heard it's Brit versus US.
So here's the thing, okay? Earl Grey tea, G-R-E-Y. I think people think it's G-R-E-Y and they like it. It's sort of like how the Santa Claus, got people misspelling Santa Claus because I thought it was an E at the end. People think there's an E. It's Klaus, yes, I know, but Santa Claus, U-S-E. They thought that meant the person. They didn't. It meant the contract, right?
Yeah.
But I think people, A, like it, and B, think it's accurate. I hate it. I'm changing it here. But if this gets published as EY,
I have no strong preference on gray spelling.
Good. Some people, as you know, are passionate about things that, like,
I have
Whatever.
things, hills I will die on.
I
Never
know.
set out on a
Synopsis, Morgan.
ship.
Tell us about the synopsis.
Just get back to minute, I think, 47 of this stream.
And you all know my hill of hills.
Verbs?
Nouns.
Oh,
I
well,
was being silly. Yes,
more
verbs.
verbs, fewer nouns.
Verbs and prologues and
No,
I'm
nouns
sorry,
and
something else.
prologues.
Well, using verbs.
Yes. And ditching prologues.
Oh, I don't
And
love
epilogue.
this. Too young to leave. I don't love this.
Me neither, but one of my readers was very confused that the space mantas were on the planet. And I'm like, this is their spawning ground. And when they get to be like a century, they can fly into the space itself. They start in the water, and then they go to the air, and then they go to the outer space itself. And two of the characters end up on a ship hurting the migration of space mantas, so it becomes a pretty major plot point.
We're gonna find a place.
Sure. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
This feels long here.
Would be in trouble.
It feels long. No. We don't need to lose that. We need the process of it to be shorter.
Yeah, but do we need no? Because no is filter language, and she will be in trouble. Not she thinks she knows it, but
this is okay. So this, I think, to
uh-huh.
me, this is the difference between omniscient and limited.
Okay, sure.
So I would say would is okay here because we don't have omniscient. We don't have.
Yep.
This is not foreboding. This is just her understanding. No. She has to move.
Yeah.
But
she's on an errand and she needs to get back to
this
work.
Is still long.
Yeah.
Can we do a suffer or something? Be in trouble. It feels maybe it's me. Let's just see if it's me. Don't put it in a query. Don't put it in a synopsis, but you can do it. It's a process. And that's why it's okay, because we are showing the result of a continuous action, right?
Twice. That's twice. Once you said I could add a preposition, and once you add a began to.
Ready, Morgan? Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yes.
Go ahead. Morgan, I think you should add process language to your story.
Okay.
Morgan, you're so happy, aren't you?
I am. I am very happy. So. You haven't cried yet.
No.
I feel really good. I haven't made Patrick cry yet, and we're on page 3.
I don't love blocks, so I'm not sure about this. Something about this doesn't feel right to me.
Because we haven't mentioned the shiny spaceport before. But
where is the shiny spaceport?
Near the coast.
It's the word blocks, though. I something about blocks. The way to me feels like a verb, and then from is just weird, and then I get okay, it's a noun. But the problem is this structure is exactly what we're supposed to have for this kind of writing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how you fix it without just tearing it up.
I mean, I could say the entrance to Brynjar's eatery was only
no,
lay a few blocks from the shiny spaceport. But I think I might just leave it.
Yeah, this is something where I can see editor going, okay, most people won't recognize the problem here, so we're just gonna let it go.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in books. I've seen there be a little blip, and then the rest of the page is fine. And you can see where if you pick that little blip, everything else falls apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've read queries
If
like
I
that
can
too. and just-
reword it, I will. If there's a problem, if I can't, then I will leave it.
most readers we find,
Yeah.
they're not me, and we're all very happy they're
Yeah.
not me.
Should I could do away with the word away. It's blocks from the shiny instead of
No,
blocks away.
no,
Okay.
something about the word blocks just doesn't.
I don't know a better word to
No,
put in there.
because if you have blocks from the thing, I'm thinking physical, actual pieces of it, and that's why. Like I
We
get
hit the road. Now we're
the
just hitting
problem is
blocks.
here. You're laying out something that's city-like,
Yeah.
and you're saying city block, which
Yeah.
I absolutely understand.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's a great way to. There's no great synonym for that because neighborhood is a different thing, and
Yeah.
intersection is more clinical than
Yeah.
you want to think here.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like I just established we're on the shell cobbled street so
mhm.
that people will be thinking blocks as in roads.
Yeah.
So,
However,
mhm.
cobbles are stones,
Yeah.
and blocks you could technically have.
What
Because
do you
I've
call it
walked
when
in.
it's shelled? When it's like oyster shells and that
You
kind of
call it
thing.
world building in a fantasy, Morgan.
I mean, that's
There might be a
what
term for it, but
Jamestown was originally paved with that. I thought it was a type of
okay.
cobbling.
So let
I
me
could
just
be
remind you,
wrong.
Morgan, the bigger a word you use, the more you inflate the importance of the thing,
Yeah.
and this isn't that language. You know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So using a bigger word doesn't help here. For example, if you would have said immaculately muddy, that
Mhm.
emphasizes it away that you don't mean. Modeled again? Okay.
Do I sell shell paved? I could do shell paved.
Paved and cobbled are different concepts, so right? I mean, cobbled is I'm picturing individual shells.
Yeah, because
Paved is
that's
more
what it
shell
is.
dust sort of thing, right?
Oh, it sounds like they actually did crush the shells before doing it,
Okay.
traditionally. So,
See,
do
I've lived in an area with cobbled roads,
yeah,
and it
yeah,
is very much individual rocks in a setting.
mhm, yeah,
And getting the snow clear from that is interesting. Paved is a different. I would. It sounds different to me.
mhm,
I would be surprised if it isn't different
yeah,
physically.
yeah,
Um, because they've had chances over the past couple hundred years to
mhm,
change their roads up there, and they have not.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, let me show you a thing here where you might go higher language, worked long hours versus toiled. The sense is different. I don't know if you mean work, then go for it. But to me, long hours accompanies a sense of um, fatigue.
I'm sorry, I was determining I did in fact want the word paved. What was
Uh,
your last comment?
I tossed the comma,
Oh, okay. Which one?
but
Ah, okay. What is the rule on whether or not butts get
yes,
commas?
it's very much feel.
Oh, okay.
The thing is that getting a conjunction to work well in that situation with a comma,
Yeah.
the pause of that,
Mhm.
you already have two significant pauses there.
True. Okay.
So
Yep. I'm
it's
comfortable with it.
if a more childlike voice or a more sort of
Mhm.
obstinate voice,
Yeah.
then yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this is
But
a
this is a
problem.
wistful kind of moment anyway, so I think it works.
That's awkward to me. Um, it becomes unawkward, but before it can be that, it has to be awkward first.
Mhm. I mean, I could do as a child, Vasilisa
That's
had
a
once.
it's at least a placeholder fix.
Yeah.
The trouble is I was having trouble um, explaining exactly why it was. But if you read only those words, right, the
Mhm.
child Melissa,
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
see why, right?
but the child Vasilisa had once been. Do I
Yeah.
put a comma there? Would
But to
that make
get
it?
there, no, God, no comma. No, 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 no,
I
no, no,
didn't
no,
think so. That's why there
no,
isn't one there.
no. Anybody who says that's just wrong.
Yeah. I could hyphen. I could make it a compound.
Huh? What?
Child Vasilisa had once been.
Where's the hyphen go in that?
Everywhere.
No. Ah. What do you? No, stop breaking things, Morgan.
I was offering a solution. We
Yeah,
don't
as a
like it.
child,
Let's
blah
move
blah,
on.
had dreamt. Hold on, let me show you. This is weak. I would give these sounds more agency over her.
Okay. As the strange sounds.
Hold on, I don't know. So I don't know if you want to go sounds of or rains and oceans sounds blah blah there. I'm not sure which is better. Strange sounds of feels very. Hold on. We're getting too technical there. That's that running. It's not the right word, but you get the point of it.
Yeah.
Listening is very sort of weak. You get
Yeah.
so here's you have strange, falling,
Yeah.
and churning. Okay,
Yeah.
if you're gonna emphasize falling, you need a word that is more than listen because listen is placeholder, and we have you see the language you have. Damp with tears needs a verb that's stronger than listen.
Bore.
It's
Endured.
no bore is no. It bore has the other meaning of it uninteresting. It's yeah, it's something like that. It's we need a it's placeholder at least, but you understand that the listen is not the word for that, right?
Uh-huh.
No.
Suffered
We
through.
just had these nouns here: sounds, rains, oceans. Now grown.
Yeah.
That's dangling. Well, that's not dangling. It's the concepts aren't changed properly.
Okay.
We don't have. Oh, that's the dream. Okay. This is another thing where getting distance from it and reading it as a paragraph.
Yeah.
We have done so much with this stuff here and
Yep.
with all this stuff here that I
Yep.
forget the child part, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you could fix in the subsequent editing session
Yeah.
because you'll need that space from it to get that fresh hit of it and
Mhm.
feel exactly where you need to hone it.
Sure. Okay.
Also, we have not had a scent in a while.
Okay.
It feels like to me. We start with the scent of the ocean and the
Yes.
kelp and the clams, right?
Yeah.
And then we have nothing since then, right?
Oh, the very next line that I don't have in there is like the smell of onions made her eyes water because that's how the smell of onions works.
Okay.
And I know it's the wrong scent.
It's you have the concept in. Okay, we as I say to everybody, you
Yeah.
can't edit words that don't exist, right?
Yes.
Having it there means we can look at it, we can fix it, we can discuss, okay, what are our options for doing this, right?
Right.
If you don't have it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like
And
literally, this is the next sentence that I didn't copy over.
go ahead.
And I know we're switching senses, but everyone
Gripped and
knows
pulled,
onions.
and that's a lot of process for just an opening
Yeah.
the door. Okay, that's just so you know. I mean, you do know this, but it's one thing to know something in the abstract.
Yeah.
Applying it
Yep.
is hard because, and I am a big example of this, editing and writing are unrelated disciplines.
Oh yeah,
As
no,
you know,
obviously.
as I know, as we keep on saying. And while,
Mhm.
yes, the stuff you learn from other people's stuff does seep
Mhm.
into your own writing, which is great,
Sure. Okay.
when you're looking at your stuff, you're
Mhm.
seeing what you think you wrote.
Yes.
To get
Wh-
a
what
handle
I
on what you
intended to
actually wrote,
write.
yeah, it takes you lovingly beating the
Yep.
shit out of your writing.
Yep.
And then I recommend that you take some time
Mhm.
to grieve the thing you thought was perfect and was actually a well-meant dumpster fire.
I
Because
literally brought this on here because I was like, I don't know if I'm doing too much world building and info dumping to the action. That's why I brought it on
yeah,
here.
and we have done practically none of that discussion. But
You
let me
haven't cried for
no,
why is nothing
I have
happening?
cringed. I don't For me to cry
Yeah.
takes a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Sure.
so let me do one thing. I'm gonna take my headphones off and read it silently to myself and see
Yeah,
how I feel
yeah.
about the
Do it.
input.
Do it.
Because I love line editing, but that wasn't what you wanted.
Yep.
Let me just see about that. Okay, there you go. I still don't like that. Okay, good. I would still push that somewhere else, but that's okay. That actually takes a lot of space than I thought. That's good. The transaction is shorter than I thought it was, which is good. It felt longer. That's because of stuff was
Because we
on.
went so long through it. Yeah. I mean, I honestly don't care what
Oh,
my
here.
character looks
See
like,
what I
but
did. I
readers
can't hear
do.
you. I'm just telling you where I am.
Okay.
I gave a dialogue tag
Mhm.
for clarity's sake
Yep.
in the no thank you language because it's an easy way to be clear, right?
Yep.
Yeah, conceptually, I think you're where you should be.
Okay.
I marked one thing and I changed another tiny
Sure.
thing just for mechanics. You know who I am.
Yep.
But
Because it
I
was
think
there.
that the important thing is you can't dwell.
Mhm.
Every character wants to be the star of the show, as you've
Yes.
seen,
Yep.
and getting them to shut up
Yeah.
takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and if they're not, if they don't want to shut up, if shutting up isn't their thing, they
Mhm.
want to do whatever other thing because they're focused on their struggle.
Yeah.
And as a writer, you have to get away from it because you have to focus on your other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is a really hard thing to find. Um, I could see places where you took away chunks of stuff from a really long, and that's fine because
Yep.
again, the
Yeah.
process is you'll
Mhm.
write, let's say, for a 50,000 word book, you'll write 150,000 words, right? We will see very few of them, and that's
Mhm.
fine.
Yeah.
See, anybody who says that you have too much there, I think is wrong.
Nobody
honestly.
told me that. I was just
Okay,
worried.
Okay, yeah.
And I wanted to be sure that I wasn't overdoing it, because I took out some description and added in some backstory, and I was wondering if I was giving too much.
No, I think what you've done is to give sort of paragraphs or less than paragraphs to each of several related concepts
Yeah.
and link them sort of situationally.
Yeah.
Um,
I try to link it to an action or a dialogue and never do more
Yeah.
than 2 sentences of backstory
Yeah.
or info dump.
Yeah. The only
Okay.
thing I would say, and we already discussed this, but just to reiterate, the what is it? This right here, I would really strongly recommend that you put it somewhere else
Yeah.
because it's massive.
Yeah.
And as we've seen,
Right.
getting away with having a paragraph of
Yeah.
explanation of whatever
Yeah.
in a dialogue, it's the mentally, to me, I don't know if I'm alone in
Yeah.
this, but to me, it's like the scene is pausing,
Yeah.
like a Zack Attack type thing, time out for for him to explain something. And as you know,
This is
that's not how books work.
honestly a frigging footnote or a
You can't
pretext.
do footnotes in fiction, can you?
I know, but I feel like the reader will want this information.
Yes. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Here's what I would do. Okay.
And I
Conceptually,
could
I
not
would
figure
put
out a
it.
way to say it shorter.
I would put it there conceptually, if
Yeah.
not literally.
Okay.
I'm saying the ideas represented in it.
Sure.
I'm not saying this exact language.
Yeah. I think if I move it there, I need to put in another action or something to go with it.
Or here more,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it makes sense
Yeah.
to have the note about the studying with the
Yes.
plot.
Yeah.
But
But I can't have both of them in the same paragraph. Both of those
no,
chunks.
you can't.
That's
This
too much.
cannot. This right here is death.
Nope. Too much.
That kind of thing belongs in a free write or in a speech delivered by somebody who doesn't care.
Right. Right.
And I would also again say you want to have some shows of the her unhappiness of being a waitress.
Okay.
Because I don't get that in this.
Okay. I could have something like she checked her comm brace. Oh, we could check the comm brace for the time, and lunch shift starts
That's
in
fine.
half an
It's
hour.
fine. I as you know, I read these things mechanically, and that is including world building elements of stuff. Like there's a movie that is coming out or came out in which they go blah blah. Oh, this is the training montage, and I so appreciated that as an understander of the composition of writing and of movies, because it's a known thing.
Yeah.
And I like seeing people play with expectations like that.
Sure.
Anyway.
Okay. I think I could add in a note about her checking her comm brace to see how much time she had until lunch shift started.
Is she on a lunch break? Or near it?
No, but at the lunch shift at the...
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that isn't clear for me. But this is... That would be, in my view.
Or before she needed to get back before the lunch rush.
Uh-huh. That would be a thing to do. I would say, overall.
Yeah.
You're at least a core draft away. Putting little grace notes of stuff, like her displeasure at being a waitress and the lunch rush, stuff like that. It takes a very fine brush, and you have to get that in and then massage everything, and as you know.
Yeah.
And that work takes diligence and time, and then you give it space. You read it over once, give it to other people. But this
I'm
is
in
not
the middle of... I did the line edits for my beta readers, and now I'm doing the larger notes while rereading to see what's sticking out to me.
So they missed all the stuff I saw, or you disagree with me on everything?
Yeah, they did.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it was worse before. I can show you the original.
I mean, I don't. Well, I mean, you know what I'm going to think about anything.
And also there's the fact that, you polish it, you step back, you polish it some more. There's only so much you can do in a single round.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
so yeah. But I like my story, and you didn't totally butcher it, so I'm
Well, no,
thrilled.
I mean, usually I mark up a lot more. Now, having said that, you are not, we've had people who are at other stages of their writing stuff. You've been doing this for a while, so you should
Right.
expect me to not find a lot. But also, betas have been through it too
Yeah,
already.
yeah.
So
So you're saying you weren't just being kind. That
I'm saying I would,
it's on its way.
I would not be kind with you, Morgan, because I don't have to. You're not a new person. I haven't really hurt your feelings, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to. You didn't give money for this, right? You said, here, do the thing.
I did actually somebody called and woke me up this weekend and asked me to increase my Planned Parenthood contribution, and I did by
That's good.
$5 a month. So I did contribute for this one.
Yeah.
I upped my monthly donation. So I don't think we're tracking my donations.
I suggested that we not do that because that's not the point.
That's not the point. Because I was going to donate anyway.
Yeah.
It's a cause I believe in. There's
There
a
you
reason
go.
we're here.
That's literally that's absolutely.
Well, that and queries. I mean, come on.
I mean, if we did only queries, that wouldn't be as much. I really, there are not a lot of places where people complain about their kids, and I like that I can just give people, because children seem okay a lot.
Yeah. And
I am not interested in perpetuating myths. Children are a lot. My sleep ability has changed because of that. I mean, there's stuff now. They have made some things much better. I can write. My characterization has improved because I've been inundated by them having a perspective I wasn't expecting to everything, to absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Thinking that I know why they're saying something. Sometimes I do, and sometimes like, oh, nope, something unrelated, right? Because just because they're looking at something or touching something doesn't mean what they're talking about is related to that. And writing the Brianna's father, I can't write him as my father. I can only write as myself imitating. But having him call her honey, I wouldn't have realized because I didn't realize it until I started doing it to everybody. I'll be at Girl Scout meetings, and I call not just my girls, but girls in general, honey, because it's just, you're a human of the female variety who is a certain size here for a certain purpose.
My bestie does that to boys, girls, adults, children, everybody.
Yeah. They have improved things, some things.
Okay.
But as I have said more than once, I would have either gotten published already or given up if not for my kids. Because spring break for me would just be writing time like it is for you. But
I don't actually get spring break, but yes, I get the point.
Right, but it doesn't exist for you because you don't have kids who are home watching TV.
Fact, the roommate's kid was at their dad's last week as a bonus week because dad had COVID, so wasn't coming. So we didn't know if the kid was going to end up with it. Kid did not end up with it, but this week is spring break, and spring break was scheduled with the dad this year. So 3 weeks in a row of no Minecraft videos.
What's that like? My kids watch okay, here's the funny thing. All right. I, at the same time, enjoy watching people play sports.
Yeah.
And don't enjoy them watching people play games. And the difference conceptually between watching football being played and watching Roblox being played.
I could do one. I can't do the other.
See, yeah. And I figured out that I'm not invested in the outcome of the game, and they
Mhm,
don't show it that much, and I'm
mhm,
not invested in the people that are watching play the game
true. Yeah,
because I care about the old football games.
right.
I know what happens in them. I look up the games to make sure I'm watching my team win because I don't know who wants to lose, right? That's boring. It's
Yeah,
heartbreaking. Well,
yeah. I'm a
but
hockey
they,
fan, and I don't mind when I miss a game and it's one in which my team lost. I'm
yeah,
like,
oh yeah, I will turn off a game if my team is down by like 5 points,
yeah,
5
yeah,
runs or whatever. It's I don't want to
right.
because if there's going to be a comeback,
Yeah,
I'll hear about it, and there'll be a video, and I can skip past all the strikeouts and the awkwardness of whatever, and get to the walk
I
off whatever.
skipped marching band for 3 years in high school, so I didn't have to sit there and watch our team lose, and by my senior year, when I came back to, because if you were taking it as an after school thing, you didn't have to do
Hmm.
marching band. If you took it as an elective, you had to do marching and concert band.
Uh-huh.
Um, and when I came back to the band class senior year, we were winning, and it was much easier to sit on the
There you go.
bandstand.
That's much less bad. Yeah.
So anyway, it is 12:30 and I have a day job. Thank you so much for taking a look at my opening pages. That's literally what I am working on right now. I just finished going, like, I was agonizing over that paragraph like 3
That
days
sentence that
ago.
you were so proud of, I should praise you for that, by the way.
Thank
It's
you.
very hard to you like a certain style of writing
I do.
that I don't, and that's
Yeah.
fine. Both approaches are valid given particular context, and I
Yeah.
will defend your prepositions in that genre because
Yes.
it's the expectation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What I write is a certain kind of thing, and you know what it is, and it's
Mhm.
not prepositions, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
But for you to be able to reflect
Mhm.
on how you're doing it and to find a better way, I think it is absolutely a better way. And to say you could work with the backstory in some other way, because as we know, backstory is so hard to get rid of. You
Yeah.
have this
Yeah.
entire thing in your head.
Mhm.
You want to just pelt
Yeah.
the reader with all your wonderful stuff, all the
And
trauma.
I filtered a prologue into this opening chapter, and
Uh-huh,
I'm
I saw that.
trying to make it less chunk, chunk, chunk. Here's a prologue chunk.
Yeah, I noticed the prologue. Thank you for
It's
not.
down to a single paragraph and it's italicized.
Yes, so it's clearly not. it's
So
it's
it's,
it could be a lot worse.
yes, it's scene
Yes.
setting to let you know you are reading a fairy tale for adults. I wanted to have the genre expectation there.
I
Because,
don't know the genre is the thing too.
yeah, Vasilisa is literally named after the Russian fairy tale that her storyline follows.
Oh, is it? Okay, I was looking at that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a story called Vasilisa the Brave, and she has a doll that gives her advice and helps her like escape
Huh.
Baba Yaga. And
Is that
they,
the oh yeah,
yeah,
Baba Yaga, yeah.
yeah. It's she's one of the ones who follows the rules and escapes.
So in your query you'd say blah blah retelling of whatever thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's real easy. People
Yeah.
sometimes get hung up over that language because they haven't
Mhm.
seen it, which makes sense because
Yeah.
retellings are common enough,
Yeah.
but find a query that does it
Yeah.
is and they freak out. They have to use many, many words
Yeah. But
because the
only
more.
her storyline is that retelling. The other
Mhm.
two characters have their whole other threads that are not fairy tale retellings.
Okay.
So,
I don't. I think you're. I'm not sure. I think you're okay with that in the query. Just saying
yeah,
it's a retelling of blah blah, and then you let the thing speak for itself. And as long as it's
exactly.
clear
Yeah.
that because it's like this. You can build a car
Yeah.
out of soap.
Right.
You can do that of whatever size. And if you're good at what you're doing,
Although that
it
has nothing to do with the soapbox derby,
no,
despite the name.
that's boxes that soap came in.
I know.
But
Sorry.
as long as you're clear in your craft work,
Right.
people who see it will understand what it is and
Yeah.
what it isn't. You
Yeah.
would not take it on the highway.
Mm-mm.
It's a fun thing to look at. Um, it's a conversation piece, whatever. Um, but when you're not clear, is that's when you get into problems.
Yeah.
So as long as you're
Yep.
the story makes, and that's something I would see if I get further into it, which I can if you really want. For you, I read 4 pages tonight, Morgan. That's a lot.
I'm very happy.
And
Thank you so much. I do
put
appreciate
in, I recommended that you use another preposition,
it.
which
Mhm.
was amazing.
Super exciting.
And I added process language, Morgan.
Mhm. I
You
know,
were very
I
happy.
know. Because it works for this
Yeah,
genre, which
it
is the
does.
only reason
And
he was
and
working with
because
it.
the process is the
Yeah,
point. Like we have
yeah,
her walking, you showing her doing this thing
mhm,
because it's getting the world building in.
yeah,
I would in that ache, putting in something about her work or some other life thing. You have a slot there to do it in. Um, I want to say it's a pretty small one, but it is one that does that. Um, because otherwise, it's someone buying clams and then
mhm,
walking home,
yeah,
and that needs to have some of
yeah,
that interiority that we talk about. Some of that,
yeah, yeah,
because she's not going to tell the person at the store,
mhm.
I'm a waitress. That's just, as you know,
No,
Bob, that doesn't really
no,
work.
no.
Um, anyway, it's 12:41.
Maybe she could just say, "We ran out before lunch," and it's not even lunch.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Make it short.
Yeah,
Make it into character. I don't know what that would be because I don't
yeah,
really have a sense for the character. Um, because I read mechanically first, and because we were not looking at that aspect of it.
no, yeah, that's fine.
And that's fine. You have different
Yeah,
revision steps for
mhm,
different aspects of things
yeah.
because otherwise you're enjamming things. And
That's one of my favorite tips for people editing. Edit in layers. Look for
mhm,
different things for each pass.
yeah,
You don't
absolutely.
have to do it
Yeah,
all at once.
yeah. Just like I have a draft in my editing process.
Yeah.
One of my last steps is capital letters
Mhm.
because I haven't earned the right to use lowercase everywhere. And I will, in my drafting process, I will delete capital letters because I don't like them. It's especially if I have some in Google Documents when you press space on a new line, the previous word gets capitalized. Well,
Mhm.
if I then edit words into the beginning of that thing, and I have a capital like the word back is capitalized, that's jarring to me, so I delete it.
Yeah.
But in the end of it, I will do a Control H for stuff. Apostrophes are fun with I apostrophe
I
whatever.
remember once when I was in, like, 3rd grade and I was doing the English, SOL or whatever testing we had
Mhm.
then. iOS, it was the iOS back then, um, pre-SATs,
Yeah,
and,
I mean,
uh,
information well.
I did really well on everything except capitalization.
Capitalization is inconsistent, let's say. Um,
Yeah.
because places like to capitalize other stuff. Like they like to have mayor be capitalized,
Mhm.
and so it's very much situational,
Yeah.
and that's not a great thing to test on because you're testing on someone else's rules that maybe aren't consistent. If I
Yeah.
were teaching my kids this stuff, I'd be like, okay,
Mhm.
we're gonna pretend that mayor is capitalized, but
Yeah.
it's really not. It's just mayor. It's just a word.
If I use mayor as a name, I will capitalize it. If I'm talking about the role, I will
Mhm.
lowercase it.
It's a yeah. I mean,
Like,
it
"Hey,
is a job
mayor," capitalize. The mayor was doing the thing, lowercase.
that Mrs. Mayor or whatever would be in that case.
Yeah,
You would, but it's
yeah.
and that is also an aspect of world building because you could have someone capitalize it in their speaking and someone else not do so.
There is an urban fantasy series by my favorite author, Shauna Maguire, in which they have the mice, and they are cryptid mice, and they are religious. And
Mhm,
they find things to worship. It can be a cow, it can be a fox that's about to eat them, or it can be the Price family that takes care of them.
mhm,
And they speak in capital letters. Every word is capitalized and you can hear it somehow.
mhm.
So, anyway, thank you all for coming. I have work in the morning. Patrick, you were amazing. And anyone who wanted a sneak peek at my space fantasy that I've been working on for 3 years, you
Yeah,
got your
wow.
sneak peek tonight. So,
I read 4 pages. Hooray!
right?
It's like I got my steps in. That's a lot for me.
I know. I know. I'm very
I'm
excited.
so proud of
So,
myself. Maybe I'll
did your
finish a
kids go to
chapter this
bed?
week. So this week I'm not working because I have my kids and I
Right.
cannot do my kids and
Yeah. No.
anything else. It's just there's
Yeah.
too much. I
Yeah.
mean,
There's 3 of them.
yeah.
You have 2 hands and there's 3 kids.
And I have 3 screens. And one of them is my computer, which I don't like for them to use because they will it's just bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have permissions on
Break
here that I don't
everything.
want them to be able because I like to be able to do stuff easily on here.
Yeah.
And for a kid, doing adult stuff easily, mm-mm.
So we will be back in 2 weeks. If you would like your first page's query or synopsis looked at, let us know. Please use your voice, use your votes, and if you can afford it, use your dollars to help support reproductive rights, abortion rights, because bodily autonomy is still important, no matter
Yep.
what else the political world is doing right now.
And sometimes especially because of it, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you all and see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Have fun.